Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome on into the ALGS Challenger Circuit number 2, of course, presented by the Apex Spark Series. My name is Dandra, I'll be your host for today, and I'm joined by two sets of amazing duos. We'll bring in our second duo here after game number 1, but for now, we got Mello, we got Tenrec that are here on the desk with me. Mello, when we came here for Challenger Circuit number 1, the game had experienced an entire shakeup. Since then, it's kind of leveled out a little bit. Tell me what you're excited about here for Challenger Circuit number 2.
Yeah, thank you, Dandra. We've had a couple of weeks to kind of settle things out, try and figure out what strategies, what characters, what everyone's kind of feeling with those big season changes that we saw. So there's been a lot of shifts, even between the start, kind of the middle between Challenger Circuit 1 and 2, and even now, more recently, the shifts have continued to sort of occur. So a couple of legends I definitely have my eyes out on. Actually, really one specifically. Rampart has been all over the place, which is definitely super interesting, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Definitely looking out for some of the new teams in the field and some of the returning ones as well.
Sure, and Tenrec, glad to have you here. We're swapping up the duos a little bit this time around, so I'm glad that you're here alongside Mello. How you doing, friend?
I'm definitely missing Tom a little bit, but I'm so glad to be with Mello, and of course, you today, Dandro. It's so exciting to hop back into CC2 with a couple new faces, a good amount of returning ones, especially from that upper echelon. Just goes to show that Apex will always be a game of follow the leader, although it's been a little more spun into chaos, as Mello has already put.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about why we're here. What are we even doing? We had close to 500 teams compete over the weekend, kind of slay their way through the gauntlet in order to get to here. Now, what are they fighting for? It is, of course, for a chance in that LCQ qualifier, as well as some points. Let's go ahead. Let's just kind of bring up the point distribution to kind of talk through it. I mean, Mello, when we look at this, you can see that even coming in kind of first, second, third, or really even this top 5 is kind of the money when we're looking at it, because you're getting a decent amount of points here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to note that this is per player as well. So these points are carried through the Challenger circuit for each split, and they belong to each player after they're finished. And even outside of that, the top 10, Dandro, this is kind of the money. This is where you want to be at. But just making it to this final, being in this top 20 is massive if you're trying to find your way into that LCQ, which of course means a spot potentially at the LAN, which is actually pretty important, pretty insane. So yeah, we're looking at this top 10 for sure. We're looking for really just scrapping for any bit of placement that you can find. So expect these teams to be fighting tooth and nail to try and climb up that leaderboard.
Yeah, I definitely think we're going to see some teams kind of really just battling it out. We have even some teams from our Challenger Circuit #1 back here again in the finals because they want those points. It wasn't enough for them to be able to place in that top, kind of 3 of Challenger Circuit #1. They want to be here. So let's go ahead. Let's take a look at some of our teams here that are going to be competing in the finals tonight, because we got some good ones. Tenrek, I mean, who's jumping off the page to you immediately when we take a look at some of these first initial teams?
I mean, out the gate, it's got to be Aporia, the recently signed team, most notably being Lonely Fans as of late, that won the previous Challenger Circuit back again to keep those points going. Just goes to show they're aware of how defined this ladder is going to get, and they don't want to straggle by the time they get to that last chance qualifier. Also, some notable teams that I've been paying attention to. Donut Shop did really well over the course of the entire Challenger Circuit last time, right up until the finals. They kind of stumbled there. Purple Slushy, they were in a very competitive lobby for CC1 and didn't make it to finals. This time they did in pretty commanding fashion. And the Crypt, boasting Dig Vibes, who most recently just won the Apex Rising Pro-Am, gotta be riding that high.
Yeah, I mean, they got to be feeling good. I love those calls, especially, like I said, Aporia. It's a team we got to watch here today. They won Challenger Circuit #1, and guess what? They're back here again. They want some of those points. But let's take a little bit about some of the semifinals rankings that we saw going in here. So, Mello, when we kind of look at this, it kind of looks like TSMX just absolutely stomped the lobby.
Yeah, this is a brand new stack of Mexican players and Amigo, who a lot of people will be absolutely familiar with, leading the charge with Talos, who actually was playing with TPM, a team we saw a little bit in Split 1, and now joined by Desinide. So, yeah, I mean, they looked fantastic. Massive amount of kills in their semifinals lobby, looking really strong. But we do also have to shout out, I think, second place, who did have a pretty good margin on that third place team, MSW, also making their return with a back-to-back Split 2 Challenger Circuit final. So definitely another team that you're going to want to keep your eyes out on. MJ, Wizard Coin, and Silent have been looking really strong as well. Yeah, absolutely the teams that you want to watch near that top of the leaderboard. But I think that whole top 10 is honestly really stacked, and the cutoff could have been a couple of other teams as well. So definitely excited to see them duke it out in a hard to lobby here.
Yeah, and you can see here was the other semifinals that we got going on here. One thing that I'm noticing between these two leaderboards, it's seeming like, yes, those first top 2 teams, they were definitely cutting above the rest of the lobby. But when we kind of look down in, where this is not too far of points between kind of this top part, and as we even get down to sort of 12th and 13th, right? Like, people are still gaining some decent amount of points as they're down towards this lower end. I mean, Tenrek, if you're one of these kind of lower teams who maybe, didn't make their way towards the top of that board, but you were kind of just outside, I mean, what are you going to be thinking about when it comes, kind of to the next foray that you're trying to throw yourself into?
I think you just have to look towards the future in that regard. I mean, you have teams that are returning from this previous CC that get to leave that graveyard in their wake once more. Barnacle Platter, Ape Gang, No Name, BIL, some of those members are back again. They've just changed their team name. You have a lot of returning champions, and then you also have a lot of teams already left in the dust. Lagiki, a great performer in last CC, stuck in the bottom this past semifinal. Dojo, also unable to make it. Team Spoon, also unable to make it. That was a team I was really paying attention to. But the other thing you have to remember is that they still won't be far behind. You know how many points you get when you get 10th place? in this CC, you get 400. You know how many points you get if you get 11th place in this CC? You get 390. No one is going to be far behind anybody else, especially since we're only halfway through this race.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because it is, I feel like one thing we talk about with every Challenger Circuit is that it's always consistency is key, right? Kind of being able to get up there and to be able to get those points is always so massive. So even though, yes, it feels like you didn't perform your best, you're still at least going home. You're not going home empty-handed. And if you can consistently get to these finals, you're absolutely going to be trying to, earn a spot in that LCQ qualifier. But we talked about what these players are playing for. We've introduced them. You get a sense of what's going on. But let's talk a little bit more about the game. Game number 1. It's going to be starting here pretty soon. But we, of course, are playing 3 games on World's Edge and 3 games on Stormpoint and Mellow. I kind of want to ask you, because we had mentioned at the top of the show, we've seen a couple of slight shifts, right, in the game and in the meta since, obviously, Challenger Circuit number 1. So give me just a high level, the TLDR of what you think we might see here as we get ready to go into game number 1, and I let you guys go.
Thank you so much, Dandra. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to watch for sure. The meta has been shifting across Pro League, across what we've been seeing in some of the other competitive spheres for the higher echelon of Apex competitive play. I think absolutely a big shift in the character selection. I mentioned Rampart a little bit. We've been seeing time and time again that it's showing up in a lot of endgames. I mean, that Pro-Am that we had just this weekend definitely showed the potential of that character, but we've also seen it work in this last Pro League day. We're seeing definitely still plenty of that Catalyst, plenty of that Seer, but I'm starting to like the shifts that we're starting to see. People willing to try out some other characters, maybe an Ashe every now and then would definitely be interesting to see. So still a little bit up in the air, but a lot of the staples are still going to be around. A lot of that Catalyst play, one of the most versatile characters in the game right now, definitely starting to show exactly why.
It's funny, isn't it, how the amount of disability that the current meta boasts has made people so energized and filled with rage for some that it is push the boundaries of what we call off-meta or anti-meta. People have really tried to get as creative as they can, and Rampart, like you said, has been one of the more accessible ways to do that, because you're still able to blend with basically any member of your normal comp. You can still work with the Bang, you can still work with the Cat, you can still work with the Seer, you can still work with a Horizon to an extent, although it's not preferred. You can still work with a Watson especially as well. There's a lot of places that you can stick her, and a lot of damage to potentially be done, a lot of ways to fortify yourselves that these teams have been looking for, so that mobility is not as much of an answer because it is so punishable right now with the counter mobility that players like Cat, players like Seer tend to boast. As CSS is going for the Valk, Seer Cat here instead of the Bangalore here on World's Edge, a little more common, as taken down Frag West. We didn't have any contests save for one when it came to drop claims, although I think that was sorted out because there was a lot of space taken in that particular POI. If I can double check where that was. Yeah, it was TS Mex and Void over on Siphon. So I'm sure either they're about to get that sorted out or plans changed.
Yeah, we might be seeing it break out here, and this is definitely a composition that we're going to see all over the place. You might even see it transfer over towards our Stormpoint games. Definitely not a surprise here. But you're absolutely right. We have to start thinking about what might be considered a counter meta with how diverse things are starting to look. If we're starting to see a little bit more Rampart, hey, suddenly characters like Fuse are in the conversation. And while the power of the Horizon has definitely fallen off, it's important to understand that not just Horizon, but many of these characters, they have to serve the team's game plan. So as these teams develop their identity, as they develop their game plans, the way that they prefer to navigate these maps and their macro, that's really what's going to determine a lot of that legend selection. Here we actually check in with Void, who has historically been in the Challenger Circuit, one of those teams that is excellent at playing zone, one of the staples even during the wild everyone playing Edge, everyone fighting meta that we had not too long ago. Void was one of the teams that was very consistent at playing that deep zone, at holding their spot, and playing for those endgames.
Sitting under him, TS Max. Hosting, like you said, Enemigo, absolute icon at this point in Apex. Added up by Talus and Dezenide, who today on Twitter was talking about how today he's going to become a pro in 2 games. Coming from Gears of War, absolutely nutty. I can't wait to see if he lives up to his own expectation I mean, what a precedent to set for yourself, but on a team like this, with how they've been doing so far, definitely foreseeable.
Yeah, and I'm liking this trend a lot of these Gears of War pros starting to shift over towards Apex and showing up in a big way. I mean, Rise Nation in the NA Pro League was, I think, our first glimpse of what we could potentially be seeing in terms of talent from that Gears of War community. So the transition continues to happen. It seems like we might be seeing even more players from Gears of War come through and make a big impact on the game, which you love to see. Right now, what we're seeing, though, is a whole lot of slow play as teams start to make their way into the zone. That's actually going to be a Gibby bubble,
Let's go,
which not the most common pick that we've been seeing as this meta has developed. In terms of characters that has their place, this is still a character that really struggles with how many seers are on the map, and we haven't seen the presence of Maggie all that much, so not worrying about that all too much either. But again, this seer can definitely kind of kneecap that character if you are able to find some of those early knocks. In any case, though, we'll have to wait and see what exactly they do to navigate that character around World's Edge.
Well, for now, it looks like they'll be able to escape things, as it doesn't look like anybody over here in Siphon wants to chase anything down. In fact, Void and TS Mex are going to stay apart from each other. And we have Lava Siphon getting a little more populated, as it is going to be in this second circle as well, pulling very, very south. Has a bit of launch site in it, in fact. So, going to be a lot of potential for teams to play this long game, hold it down, and Donut Shop being no different. Just holding these very tight corners. Said before, Donut Shop made it to finals, underperformed, unfortunately, just could not get their feet off the ground. And it didn't come from early contests. It really just came from them getting picked off more often than not. I think their best placement was maybe 16th over the course of those 6 games, unfortunately. So, hoping for a better time today to rack up those points, because that team has has 3 great players. Really, a lot of great chemistry as well.
Not quite as bad, but the same can almost be said for the squad on your screens right now. MSW, 11th place finish in that first Challenger Circuit. Definitely looking to improve that. As we had that discussion at the beginning of the game day today, still racked up a good amount of those Challenger Circuit points that they're going to need to try and qualify for that LCQ. But you can absolutely know for a fact that they are hunting for more. They know they can do better. And here they are in their first sort of scuffle of the day today. MSW on the deep northeast edge. Actually not too deep, just outside of ring here, but deep in that zone relative to a lot of the other squads that we've already seen make their way in.
They're one of only 2 teams in that storm at this point, and I think, or no, 3 now, as it actually looks like TSMX is gonna potentially, or not TSMX, excuse me, but another team might be joining them. We'll see how they duke it out. BIL, team that I was really paying attention to, as Koifel and Yazto from Hot Dog coming over to hang out with Kikix and Vem, really joining forces. I mean, this is already a bevy of points that they have for themselves as a unit, but to grab some more tonight, I'm terrified of them.
Absolutely. And there we see just how absolutely packed this zone is. I mean, so many teams vying for some of those priority spots that they're hoping that they're going to play in this end game. And we see it's pulling out just northeast of Tree. And unfortunately for a lot of the squads that we see there, one of the most populated spots right now is actually launch site, and they might not really have the intel, the next beacon scan information to know that that's what's happening. So maybe in for a very unfortunate, very annoying surprise. Night Raid, one of those teams that seems to have an idea of where this is going. I'm not exactly sure if they can tell from their mini map there, but yeah, right now working on a bit of a keep out from the Tree side. I want to make sure that any teams that might be looking to funnel their way in don't make it in, because they have a whole lot of clearing to do. I see there on our screen, I think at least 3 teams that are on this side of the map, including Barnacle Platter, who is another team that definitely wants to improve from their 19th place finish in Challenger Circuit number 1 finals. This
migration from launch side is going to be hell for any of those teams that aren't rocking Valkyrie. Although, in a lot of these comps, we have seen it. Here's our first Rampart of the day, coming from Bursty here on Ape Gang, another team that performed very well in the previous CC1 finals. I believe they got third. They got somewhere in the top 5. But they dominated with incredible positioning, great 3-man ratting strats, and just really great fight taking from higher ground or better accessibility. Looks like this time is no different, as they will place themselves smack dab in the middle of this next circle with all of the Rampart util you could ask for, and already they're going to start scoping out some damage to farm.
And still 20 teams up. We see that Ape Gang does have information on that next ring, which is why they are taking up this position early. This is definitely going to be presumably a very playable spot, especially if it continues to pull their way over towards that cart on the low ground, or even if it ends up pulling up towards that platform on the high ground, up closer towards Siphon. So they're playing something where they can definitely get a lay of the land. They can look at all the teams that might be taking those skyward dives in late with those Valkyries, or squads that are just squandering their rotations a little bit. But as we saw from that mini map, from that full view of the map, excuse me, just a little bit ago, there are so many teams already posted up on the southern side of the map that I think what they're really looking for is exactly what you said. They're looking to poke for damage. They're looking to get those evos up because they're not in the worst shield situation right now, but you obviously want to be a little bit more kitted up before you find yourself in an endgame.
And then it's just going to become a battle of timing when everybody has to make that change. Where are your eyes going to be? Where is your gun going to aim? And when are you going to be the ones to make a break for it? Because everyone's going to have to at some point. Just a question of when. A little bit of luck involved, but also just that sense to know when these other teams have to book it. For most of them, it is indeed a while because, again, of so much Valk presence in this lobby at the moment, a lot of teams clearly opting to play for the slightly later game. And I empathize with that. Because 3Ps and 5Ps have been getting increasingly earlier and earlier at the moment, is the setup with the exhibits, the dark veils that are usually thrown out because of it, have required teams to kind of take a bigger vantage to these approaches or to these thirsts when they really want to try and find them. And it leads to either these dog piles that we've already seen take place in CC, or droughts like we've seen take place both then and now, as we are still at 20 squads.
Yeah, and don't be fooled here. We're about to see that third ring close, which I think is really going to be the breaking point for this massive stack of squads. Obviously, the whole field of squads that we still have left alive. So, yeah, you have to wonder, and it's important to note, it's not all about how many squads are in the end zone, right? Even if you have 20 squads at this point in the game, you have to wonder if maybe there was a missed opportunity for a good fight that an edge team has now missed out on. Clearing out the edge for these edge teams really critical, and the fact that we see every squad still up means, hey, maybe you were a little too late on the draw, maybe you didn't catch the timing, maybe you didn't catch that team that you needed to turn into KP before you waltzed into this ring. And now that we see the next pull especially, I mean, the amount of space that's left to play is very, very minute, and the priority positions have obviously already been taken up by some of the squads that have slightly better knowledge, not just of the way the ring tends to pull, just the end zones in general, but also the ones that are running things like Catalyst and Rampart, those characters that enable you to scan that ring. So yeah, I think this next closed Tenric is going to be an absolutely savage one.
Yeah, blood definitely going to be shed. And the team that actually looks to take over for it, maybe BIL, excuse me, is Koifel, Kikix, and Vem have this western end of launch site's exit completely covered. Meanwhile, Ape Gang keeping their vantage alive. They want to as long as they can, although they will have to move pretty soon. Not too much, though. Being said, some of these buildings already been taken, a couple really advantageous positions, but no god spots have completely materialized as the Crypt gonna try and land on their own. Will lose dig vibes in the process. Vera and Slater had to split pretty quick, and now they will entangle themselves into the sulfur.
Yeah, and the spot is very difficult to play without the Watts in there. You see that the very standard comp that we've been seeing develop this season is in the back pocket of the Crypt. So they're just hoping, praying that no grenades start flying their direction. They don't really have the best way to defend against them, but thankfully for them, no one really has the And no one really has the ability to just walk up on them, roll up, and have perfect sight lines to shoot down, because across the way there's just far too many teams that are looking for an opportunity to take down an overzealous team. Right now, our Challenger Circuit 1 winners, Aporia, are starting to make their way in with a skyward dive, and they find an entire 3-stack posted up with Sheila all the way on the low ground that they were looking for, and now they're just quickly running out of options for what to play.
And I think these players, the itching has really started. They want blood. They smell it in the water. KSR, the team that was approached here initially by Blueberry from Aporia, still holding themselves in. They are unfazed by what is in front of them, but so much now more beyond that they're continuing to attempt to pay attention to. They still have this sight line down. I wonder how much they're questioning whether or not they should move, because safety of this spot in particular might be compromised depending on how aggressive the high ground these other teams want to take may be. As finally, it looks as if Siphon may see some action with all the teams that are inhabiting it as well. Blueberry still hugging this corner. Some players still occupying the buildings of Lava Siphon, as the circle will be closing up in 50 seconds. So still trying to gatekeep that at the moment. Some teams jumping the gun here, and they are met with oncoming fire from behind instead. So this rotation going to be awkward for just about all of them, and Void may actually be the ones caught in the vice grip, especially considering that they are down a player as well.
Once again, we get to see another spot that's very difficult, very risky to play without something like a Watson at your disposal. So they're just going to be holding on, hoping that grenades don't come start flying their way, or a full 3-stack ends up swinging them. But checking in on Bricked, who is looking to make potentially a full swing of their own. They recognize that they might be pressured from some of the other squads that are on the other side of this ring, but this is just looking too juicy, Tenric, and I think they might take the leap here to find that KP, but we see just around the corner something that they might not, a full squad ready for the 3P opportunity, and it looks like as they peel off, they get to find the kills that they were looking for potentially. Nice bit of flesh damage there. I don't think the knock was found, however, and now a re-engage from behind.
This is Bricked, Artsy's team, originally coming from Psycho/Crypt. Performed really well in the past CC with this new squad. Hartley from X-Psycho. Dynamike looks to make a run for it as the last member of Purple Slushy will fall. Mike attempting to save face, but there's still so much more Storm to conquer and may just be out of luck indeed. Bricked will fall next. Now comes TS Mex's run as they use their Dark Veil to make their way all the way down this asphalt front of Siphon and hug this edge of the circle where competition is standing directly above them. How heavily can they commit to this? It looks like they can fully, as Enemigo, it will be the last one remaining. Donut Shop will collapse upon TS Mex, and only Ashley Marie falls in the process. We are down to 13 now, Mello, as the circle is finished closing, and Donut Shop is not done with LOSs.
And I love that, them being proactive there, understanding that if they find those kills, that's another team gone from what they potentially have to walk into. So great use of the Gibby bubble there. They won't have it up for that rest, but they don't necessarily need it. Look at how much high ground control they have here relative to the squads that are left on this side of the ring. They're basically the last sort of high ground bastion here before this next zone. Underneath them is Barnacle Platter, who is going to have to move as well, and they're the ones trying to pressure them with those sky nades, not really finding their mark. Ape Gang on the other side, though, is starting to find their mark on some of the kills that they feel are rightfully there as they've walked up, but they've lost a member in the process.
Yeah, they have too much competition too close to them. They weren't prepped for the aftermath. But still, perhaps 1 or 2 KP grabbed more here as Bursty, met with a bad angle, has to retreat pretty quickly, and Plug Cube gonna follow, but on all fours. Now Laser, the last member of Most Hated, who's been doing all of that dirty work, looks to go for the wipe here, and has a good chance of it. Some time has been handed back over to shield back up, but there is such little space to recover. It is such a bad spot that Laser looks to capitalize in as this circle comes in, because Laser will have to do some moving as well. Ape Gang will fall, but immediately after, Laser met up by just 1 member, and Chick is from No Name. That's 2 technical squad wipes for Laser, as they now have a full-fledged free run for the nearest building that is also occupied.
And both of the squads that you see here, at least one of them is still in zone, but Team Wake it looks like is going to have to play just a sliver of space left, and in the meanwhile, Void going down to 2 members, both of them incredibly low, just in time to get the bats off. Knife's damage coming out from Blitzen. They managed to hold onto this corner for the time being. Washi does end up going down, and Blitzen is just praying right now that no one else comes to finish the job, and we're going to start to see those catalyst walls come down, as well as those exhibits from the many seers that we have in the lobby. That's going to be Barnacle Platter. We saw them just a second ago. Now they're reaping the benefits of these late drop downs, looking for a shield swap here to hopefully stay up, stay healthy, but Golden might be following suit.
They might have just met their match. They were looking so consistent up till this point, but they've taken the low ground. They finally decided to hop into the skirmish where every other team seemingly has some sort of fragmentation. No one has seen Barnacle Platter on the kill feed, and also everyone has seen one team with still all 3 members and so much of this circle to still boast. It's got to be in the conversation a little bit. A team boasting so many golden players, pun intended, that already have so many points from CC1. They look to make an impact in the very first entry onto the Battlefy, as Fearless is gone, but Golden and Luxford have so much space to work with, as Most Hated will fall next. 3 squads now in their way.
I love that you bring that up. Barnacle Platter does have a ton of space. I think they're the last team on this side of the ring, so as long as they can continue to hold cover and just hop from one to the next, they may be able to outlive some of the squads that are just holding on by a wall. That's all that's left between them and the rest of the squads. And we see there up on the top right that Barnacle Platter is not able to do it. They are eliminated. T-Wake is 3 strong as we go into the top 3.
And that space has now been breached. Trying to take it again. Wake is going to choose to keep their distance this time around. It's a question of how you approach this, because you know those death boxes are still very much there. CSS, one of the teams considering it. All these players have had experience before, but making it this far may be a newer demon to them. They are going to brave that storm despite one of their members falling. It's Cloaked and Call Spades entering the ring, shredding, melting, but it's not enough. Wake now solo has to deal with the storm coming from Donut Shop, who made it through and were able to weather it out more than anybody else. A chaotic final circle, to be sure, where no one seemingly had a god spot to work with. It was all sulfur all the time until one team was eventually able to become kings of the low ground, and who knew it would be the team with the Jibby.
Oh, that is crazy. Just seeing the way that CSS decided the win is not in the cards. You know what? We're just going to full swing the squad. We know they're playing just the back of a rock and a couple of pixels of cover to make sure they secure just enough KP to maybe find a second place finish. Unfortunately, they don't do it there, and they're going to fall in 3rd, giving the win over to Donut Shop. That was a blast to watch, but I can't wait to see what Dandro and the other fantastic caster duo have to say about it. So take it away.
Hey, thanks, Mello. What an amazing game number 1 to kick it on off. Donut Shop, Tenrek had kind of talked about them at the start of the show, and, well, for good reason. They kind of put on a show there at the end of that game, but we're going to bring it back onto the desk. We got 2 new faces. We got, of course, Dia and the man of the hour himself. It is Tom, both legends in the Apex scene, so I'm glad that they are both here. Tom, I want to kick it off with you because we were kind of talking in the green room a little bit on the back about that Gibby and just how impactful it can be played. You know, we've kind of, Gibby used to be the staple sort of legend in the meta, in sense has maybe gotten a little bit replaced, or teams are kind of trying to play a little bit differently. So talk to me about this pick and why it was so impactful.
Yeah, I think that Gibby offers more flexibility than perhaps teams are giving him credit for at the moment. You know, there are more counters to Gibby than when we saw him, you know, really firmly in that meta. He got all the way up to like a 98% pick rate, I think, was his peak. So he was a staple for a long time. And the sort of the Seer became a counter. But actually, that's only a counter to some aspects of his kit, you know, the reviving and the steadying to heal. What Gibby gives you is flexibility. You know, we're in a situation where zones are chaotic. That was absolutely crazy. I think the zone algorithms changed as well, that we're seeing a lot more zones end in the open. having that cover, even if you get cancelled in your cover when you're popping a bat, you still can't be shot, right?
Yep.
You can still take your time, have a breath. I think there's a mental calmness to Gibby as well. It allows you just to stop for a second and have a look and then make a call altogether to group your team up and then, act as a team. I think that we might see more and more teams start to re-identify and pick up throughout the rest of the Challenger circuit.
Yeah, I feel like that's been really a theme kind of between Challenger Circuit number 1 and Challenger Circuit number 2 is that teams are kind of more comfortable kind of flexing their legend pick and really trying to pick the legends that work to their play style and not just, kind of what's quote unquote meta. Dia, this is, we're kind of brothers today. This is our second Apex event of the day for both of us. So glad that you can be here. Obviously, Challenger Circuit, we're continuing it on. What are you expecting to see out of our second event here today as opposed to number 1?
Ooh, I you know what? When I'm looking at NA and the way that actually the zone pivoted, like you just mentioned, Tom, I am finding myself wondering whether the chaos that I saw in EMEA this morning was just a fluke or something that happened as a result of a long time between Challenger circuits. It may actually be teams trying to adapt to these differing zones that we're seeing, and I'm preparing myself for that and sort of second-guessing my analysis from earlier today, wondering what Game 2 will bring us, because if this repeats, I don't think that we can say that it's just teams taking too long of a break anymore. It's absolutely something changing about the math behind the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we have to keep in the back of our pocket, right? We know how some of this intangible skills of reading the zone is just so important. And we're seeing here some of these teams that are bringing it on up and able to kind of use that to the best of their ability. And Donut Shop, our winner of game number 1, they're obviously kind of using that to their advantage. 22 points here in game number 1, obviously creating a lead. We got Team Wake not too far behind in 14. CSS a little bit behind that with 11, and then we kind of start seeing the drop off a little bit. Barnacle Platter there with those 3 kills, 8 points. Obviously, most of those coming from placements, and then Most Hated and Void kind of just neck and neck, both bringing in 10 points. I got to give a huge shout out to Laser, who just pulled some absolutely insane stuff, just some straight Beam Lord activity to kind of keep the team alive, and that's kind of the stuff you need. So even though they did only come in 5th, they had those 6 KP to their name. I got to imagine, I'm kind of looking at that Most Hated squad as one to maybe make some moves. And you can kind of see the rest of the teams there. Some of these teams that we called out, maybe having a little bit of a slip up. Number 1, I'm looking at number 19, Aporia, the 1 kill. And that was the only points they got. And we were kind of saying that was a little bit surprising given they just full sent a team and landed directly in front of them and somehow got out taking like 20 damage. I don't know what's going on there. But Tom, when we kind of look at this and some of these squads, what's kind of coming out to you? I know it's only been 1 game. We're about to head into game number 2. But what are the changes you're making, as a competitor between game 1 and game 2?
I don't think you make that many changes between game 1 and game 2 because we are playing a battle royale. If the zone just doesn't pull your way, or something unlucky happens, or a team maybe does something that you're not expecting, because let's not forget that there's a lot of teams in the Challenger circuit. You can't necessarily prepare like a Pro League team would prepare. You maybe haven't faced against some of these teams. There's a lot of new teams here today. There's a lot of unknown teams. Especially when we were, preparing for the broadcast here, we said there's a lot of teams here that people just haven't really heard of. So as a competitor, that's exactly the same position as a viewer or somebody working on a broadcast. Is You try and do your research, but you only have that 24-hour window to do so. So I think that you're going to stick with it. You're going to maybe hope for a better zone. But at the same time, maybe there are micro adjustments that you're going to make in terms of how quickly you rotate or how quickly you loot, because you've got a bit more of a feel for how the lobby's playing out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know, like you said, when we were looking at some of this team list, and we're like, wow, there's a lot of teams that we have no idea. And I think you hit it right on the head. It's hard to prepare for what you don't know. So you have to rely on those innate skills that you have as a squad, right? Your ability to read zones, your ability to understand how to play the different positions where that zone does pull. And I think we're seeing some of these teams are a little bit more comfortable when it comes to that situation that's there. So I'm excited for kind of game number 2, that we have a flavor, we have a taste of how, kind of the game is going to feel. Obviously, it's tasting a little bit like Boston cream. That's my favorite donut. And I imagine that team is still going to keep doing even more. But Dia, let's talk a little bit about some of the legends that we saw make an appearance in that game number 1, because kind of between Challenger Circuit number 1 and Challenger Circuit number 2, we've had a little bit of a shakeup. I want to ask Mello about it later, but I want to get your opinion on it too. We saw Rampart obviously now making an appearance here, and we actually saw, we continue to see the use of Catalyst, obviously at the end of that game, Arcvale just doing some insane work towards the end for that squad. I know it didn't obviously kind of help them, but take a look at this. Walk through some of these pick choices, because I think some of it might be a little surprising.
Yeah, Dandro, I'm really excited to talk about Rampart, but I want to clarify something first. When we're talking about Rampart, I'm the A team. Mello is the B team. Don't ask him about Rampart pretending it's anywhere near the same. I have passion for Rampart. That man passionately hates Newcastle. That's his doctorate. My heart is happy, of course. We talked about this on Pro League yesterday, but when Rampart is in the game, it's really enjoyable to watch for me, just because she's been out of meta for such a long time. But from the perspective of what she's bringing to a team, you're getting a lot more flexibility, and it's actually flexibility that's just a little bit delayed from that you talked about with the Gibraltar, Tom. When you bubble, you get instant safety, but it's a lot more temporary than that of a Rampart, who not only gives you a more tenable area to play, but as well, a lot more threat onto teams that will choose to ego chow you. So, if you know that you can lock down lines of sight, and if you have specific ones you want to focus on, Rampart's really good about controlling those.
I like that a lot. And thank you for, PhD Dia on the Rampart, kind of dissertation there. Maybe we'll have a little bit of a debate later between you and Mello, right? Kind of like one of those sports talk shows. You guys can get to argue at each other. But this time it'll just be... Yeah, it'll just be like who knows Rampart more and can explain better. We'll let Tom be the judge, because realistically, you're both probably don't know as much as Tom, and that's totally fine. Tom probably has like an article queued up already for like why Rampart is an insane kind of legend coming into the game. If I had to guess, we'll see that. But game number 2, it's ready. It's getting ready to come up here. Not too far, but we can see her. There we go. All right. Wow. I was a complete guess that the game was ready, so I'm glad that timing worked out. Hey, Dia, Tom, welcome in. Take it away, boys.
That's a professional right there. Dandro's game sense was on point. Literally had the spidey senses tingling as we drop in. And let's get into it, because, Tom, Game 2 is where you make a lot of adjustments, and as you said, you don't want to change too much about your gameplay. You're keeping this to micro changes, because in your first round, especially in the finals of Challenger Circuit, you're meeting 10 teams for the first time at the very least, and now is your opportunity to let the instincts of the game take over. Were you rotating too early? Were you rotating too late? And how does it stack up against the way that these other squads want to play the game?
Yeah, absolutely. It might even be that game 1 you are landing in a spot that you haven't landed in all weekend, because a lot of teams, choose to flex those drop spots. Because, there's so many teams, right? What if you had 7 teams in a lobby that wanted to go Maud or Lava City? You're not all going to stack it, probably. So there's so much flexibility in the Challenger Circuit, because it is, almost a roulette, essentially, of what teams are going to be in your lobby, how do those teams play, what legends do those teams play, and when there's like 500 teams almost, I think, that competed this weekend, that's a lot of options and a lot of possibilities. So I think we're going to see teams settle in. I look to teams like the Crypt, who, are very experienced, 10 record out, Dig Vibes, won the Apex Rising event. There's a lot of experience on this team, and just because they had, a slightly below standard opening game doesn't mean they're going to throw away, all of their scrim practice, all of their game plans that they've been working on, all of the things that they said coming into this tournament they wanted to do, and, their game style, just because of a bad game 1. That's just too reactionary and not how you would approach, such an important tournament.
A very hard-working squad. We'll see a lot of teams, especially after the Pro League qualifier, if you don't make it, start to reorganize, perhaps fall off, take a few weeks, and even sometimes jump right out of Split 2, hoping instead to requalify in Split number 1 for the Pro League qualifiers. But the fact that the Crypt are back here putting in the work is really heartening for them, and for me, as a spectator, watching them continue to develop. They got a good game plan coming over for Mod, but Donut Shop, they've got a pretty robust one as well, because you get 2 very powerful POIs here. Staging and Mirage? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, where Mirage is on World's Edge, I think, is probably the best spot across all the maps, but it does make a really interesting calculation, because sometimes it's the Lava Fisher team that takes Mirage, sometimes whole teams will land there on their own, sometimes staging team. gets Mirage, and I think it shows, the strength and the power of this Donut Shop squad that they've been able to lock that down for themselves. I think they showed in Game 1 why teams are giving them that respect and allowing them to access, such a strong set of POIs, because Staging has a great console rate, it has some pretty decent loots, and it has really favorable rotates as well, and they're going to take full advantage. We see them setting off nice and early.
We've talked about what Donut Shop have. We haven't talked about what they don't have. When they're running with something like the Gibraltar Rampart, it's very easy to look at those legends and go, well, this is what they're giving them, this is why it's better than other squads. But this is one of our teams not running a Seer, which is extremely strange to see, Tom.
Yeah, I think that, it's nice to see teams not just hard relying on the Seer. As we take a look at the map here, we can see that this zone is pulling pretty much, in the center of the south section of the map. I think it's nice to see. I think that it's a hard decision, right, whether you run a Seer or not, because so many teams have a Seer. I think it was like 18 of the 20 teams had a Seer in our first game, and the best counter to information is always information. Unfortunately, they can scan you. There's nothing better than scanning them back. But at the same time, they are offering something different, both tangibly in terms of what abilities they have to offer in the game, but also in terms of how other teams react. People aren't going to be experienced at fighting, the Rampart Gibby combination. People haven't been practicing against that very often. People don't necessarily know the counters, and people might be slightly put out by that. And I think that does give them an advantage, because it makes them essentially a big element of surprise in terms of what spots they can play and how they're going to, behave in certain situations.
It's looking like it. We got another team this round holding the bridge. This was a really popular spot in game number 1. Still very nice to be able to take control of, especially because it's very difficult to push. In a zone like this, it is looking like this should bring you a lot of success as more and more teams start to rotate into this southern harvester area. So as people start moving, we're kind of getting an idea, despite the fact that we haven't gotten zone read, as to where things are going to end up. But Bricked are encountering some trouble making their way there, and have also picked up a pretty unique legend choice in the Horizon for going Catalyst and opting into the Bangalore alongside Seer.
Yeah, I think that Horizon, we were talking about some of that, before the show, about Horizon is in a really weird spot, because the changes that she received at the start of the season, I think, completely changed what sort of a legend she is when you're looking at it from a competitive standpoint. But I think, in IGL as experience as Artsy, obviously he was formerly part of the Crypt, the team that missed out by just 1 point to Pro League. So he is, nearly at Pro League standard. You could argue, just a little bit of luck if went their way on that day, that Artsy would have been in Pro League right now with the Crypt. So I'm sure that he's made that choice for a reason, and it'd be interesting to see how they use that Horizon if we get to see any of that in the fights today. Are they trying to use her as that refrag, or are they going to use her more as the new anchor and positioning legend that she is now?
You're going to need some sort of defense if your team Wake at the moment. You need somebody to reinforce these doors, but Colors can't do it. Instead, it's a Dark Veil straight down the center of the RV to try and keep their down Seer safe. All it does, however, is just make the sightlines more obtrusive as Colors goes down, and finally, doors are going to be reinforced. This could just be Wake bleeding out. All it takes is one team stepping up to them. One well-placed nade to take this squad down.
Yeah, I mean, Wake is just getting absolutely colluded on right now. He is the center of attention. Everybody's looking his way, Barnacle Platter. Everybody's essentially in a competition now to try and get that kill. They're going to see him as easy meat, but he is getting some assistance here as, more teams rotate into the zone and teams aren't able to just give him 100% focus, but that's definitely a very rough spot to be in.
Barnacle Platter, after having a surprisingly poor showing in CC number 1, have made it back. Team Wake, by the way, quick check-in, did bite the dust outside of the RV. They're the first squad to expire, and already, especially with teams like Barnacle Platter, encountering other teams in their building, we're getting to the point where Valgulting in is no longer really safe. There are very few open positions left to play, but fortunately, a lot of teams that rotated in early have predicted exactly where the zone is going.
And here we go. Valcult alert. And what do you see? Several charge rifle beams heading towards that Valcult. We'll see where Bursty and Co are going to try and head. Are they going to be able to squeeze their way into a spot? They're flying like they don't really think that there's anything good open, but this truck might be able to make a home for them for the time being. But these trucks are so difficult to play without a Watson. You might be the the ultimate Rampart enthusiast. I'm definitely firmly on Team Watson. And every time a team dies in one of these cards to grenades, I laugh in pylon.
Yeah. It certainly's got to feel good. That is another legend that we can start talking about, especially when Gibby pops up more, the value that a Watson can bring to his squad. But right now, things like the Rampart are going to be enough to at least temporarily help this squad survive. Once again, though, we've got Aporia dropping in, this time perhaps having paid for some of their earlier sins. They get Blueberry back into the game and are going to be playing things out, evidently as a duo, coming from Dome towards the south. A difficult rotation, and one that they don't have that much time to make. Second zone's already starting to tick away.
Yeah, that's a really, they'll be pleased to get that reset, and obviously they have that crafter to try and craft as many, flesh meds as they can, get those med kits in the backpack ready to get into zone, but it's really difficult, and I think the game plan for a team in that situation has to just be try and third-party something. People aren't going to know you're there. People are going to be discounting you. No, three-stack team is going to be in Dome crafting medkits at this stage of the game. So you do have that element of surprise, but it's definitely, this is definitely a game where if you make 3, 4, 5 points, you're thinking actually, with the situation that they found themselves in, that would be a decent result, and they'll GG go next for game 3.
Until Fire Beavers start playing in NA Challenger Circuit. That's
true,
when you really got to be worried.
It's almost 3 in the morning. Don't give me nightmares by mentioning Fire Beavers.
We do have KSR, interestingly enough, playing the exact same spot that they did last time. And that is the nice thing about rings like these, especially when you're making small adjustments between games. When we're pulling to a similar position, a lot of squads are able to run back their game plan with minor adjustments, making them all the more comfortable. For KSR, in this particular case, you'll remember that Aporia dropped down next to them and almost ate an entire Rampart to the face before ultimately getting away with their lives. However, now that they're playing out of, again, the low ground, in a position that not many people will predict the zone to go to, I'm not saying that I know where the zone's going either, because as we said, math has been kind of crazy recently. But I'm expecting this game to be better for them no matter where the ring pulls.
Yeah, and I think that makes positions like where we see the crit playing more valuable. Because, okay, the zone might not end right here, but you have to think about what a position offers you in multiple situations. If it is that zone that pulls right underneath this bridge, they're in a great spot. They have high ground the whole game. If it's a zone that, maybe pulls slightly further away into Lava Siphon, they have a fairly easy rotate because they can just walk along the tracks. If it pulls, more towards Tree, they have high ground over a lot of teams, and they're going to be able to maybe identify a spot, drop off the tracks and third party something, and then move in. So I think we are going to see teams perhaps trying to prioritize flexible spots more when zones have been slightly unpredictable. I don't think anybody really can fully say that they completely can just predict every zone at the moment. We've seen some really weird zone pulls. There's definitely been some changes to the maths. I don't think we know fully what they are. So spots like this, and the Crypt will be feeling pretty happy that they'll have 3, 4, 5 game plans. If the zone goes here, if the zone goes here, if the zone goes here, and they're going to know exactly what they're going to do in all of those situations.
Oh my lord. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do around the edge of the zone. That's Fry. Apex Superheroes just have 1 member left, but standing in the zone with 2 looking up at you. R99s in hand. Not much that you can do against that. We're going to see yet another squad fall. That's to the hands of BIL, qualifying into today, second out of Group 2 with 42 kills on the day. These guys are no strangers to fighting on edge.
Yeah, and I think that was just, prime SEA gameplay again with the zone, right on the edge of zone, playing as on edge as possible, and actually now getting quite lucky to have that crafter there. I don't know if maybe both teams had gone for that crafter, but they're going to be able to maybe replenish their heals and make sure that they have plenty of bats, plenty of medkits to fight their way into zone. They've still got quite a long way to go to get into the next zone.
MSW, they've got a difficult road ahead as well. It's not so much the distance as it is the guessing game that comes with it. Things, as we talked about, like the Valkyrie Ultimate, are starting to lose value as we get a little later into the game. And Horizon will as well if they choose to try and walk in through these closed spaces, say around Lava Siphon or the train tracks that surround it, where you don't have that much movement available to you. It's a difficult spot for MSW to be in, but a team that's been together for a long time that I'm hoping can overcome the struggles that they also faced last Challenger Circuit, finishing in 11th.
Yeah, and I think you're right to mention that experience, because sometimes experience can count for a lot more than I think a lot of teams really bank on, because so much of a Battle Royale, as we actually see most hated here, they're going to find themselves as the meat in the sandwich for a minute, so it'll be interesting to see how they wiggle their way out of this situation. They're going to use those Bangalore smokes to just secure their situation, but they're actually illustrating my point that sometimes in the Challenger circuit, having just been in stressful situations and having mates to focus you go along, not having those pre-prepared game plans, and just being experienced enough to be calm when you're under pressure can really help you a lot more sometimes than just mechanical skill.
They do at least have a good disengage ready to go. They're preying on the fact that other teams don't have digis, though, because looking at most hated right now, they got a lot of SMGs, they got a Bangalore that's being liberal with these smokes, but they don't actually have a way to see through them should things get iffy in the late game scenarios when you've got other squads running, say, legends like Seer that don't even need digis to be able to mow you down through the smoke. So a little bit concerned about the game plan later on when you're running a Bangalore. You do need resources like digital threats, otherwise you're just going to get beamed out in late game.
Yeah, exactly. As we see, more and more teams now having to take fights on the edge of zone. Barnacle Platter gonna hopefully clean this up, but Golden's gonna go down. It's gonna be up to Luxford and James Phillips to try and pick up this last kill.
Full health Luxford, double knockdown shield should be pretty easy. No name, go down, and Barnacle Platter finally get to stop sharing space. Something that honestly, they've been waiting for quite a long time, ever since they first got shot in the back trying to take out Wake, the first squad to fall. Harvester slowly starting to be excluded from this zone as well, continuing to pull further south and into the open, specifically onto the high ground outside of Lava Siphon.
Yeah, this is definitely, we talked about, the unique and interesting, as we should say, pulls that we've been seeing with zones recently, and I think this zone, will catch quite a few teams out. But those teams on Harvester side, one team is going to have a really good spot. There's 3 teams over here now. You can see that, we can see Artsy's team have been playing in that choke for most of the game. There's 2 teams in Harvester. They're going to have to collapse on each other at some point, and one team is going to have a good spot. But the question is, who's going to blink first, who's going to rotate first, and which team, is going to claim all this space on this side of the zone if they can clear that back.
An interesting dynamic evolving here is a lot of our squads that did group up over by Lava Siphon are running the same game plan as well. CSS looking down in Harvester are going to have to face off against some of those teams that do put themselves in high ground position. Donut Shop are playing right the same up on the high ground just to the south Siphon, and there's a lot that you're going to have to contend with, especially if you're going up against a squad that you're rotating out of the same POI as.
Yeah, exactly. And you see so many times that teams, especially in a big situation, a big finals, still fairly early on into the tournament, are very hesitant to make a move because both teams know they have to move. Both teams know that they have to do something. As we see, CSS are going to, try and take advantage of the damage, but they have now lost the advantage. They are now the team having to push towards the zone. They are now being gate-kept because both teams hesitated and CSS just didn't take the initiative to push first. Let's see. TSMX, yeah, there we go. Big fight underneath the bridge.
They don't actually drop a member. That's very surprising, especially in eliminating KSR, the squad that grouped up here with a full Rampart for the second time and were unable to hold it. Now TSMX taking them out, lose Talus. They lose all 3, in fact, as everyone drops simultaneously to the duo of Purple Slushy.
And now we head over to Harvester, where it's looking a little bit like Epcot at Disney, with Cyril down, Catalyst Walls down, several teams having to work their way to zone. Even more teams seem to have ended up on this side of the zone. Most hated are trying to lead the charge, but they're going to fall. CSS also down to 1 member as well, and it's a complete bloodbath on this side of the zone.
Starting to walk straight into a Sheila as well. We got just a glimpse of that as Laser fell. Bricked trying to make their way in, but this is an unforgiving storm as they get eliminated, taken down by Kix and Vem. Koifel having fallen, but perhaps recoverable if BIL can keep their zoning up. Is that caustic gas?
I think it was caustic gas.
Who is playing Caustic right now? I haven't seen them yet, but I have no doubt we'll find them soon. Squirrels, for now, sharing a little bit of space, trying to get these nades picture perfect underneath. Nasty still alive, still doing just fine, and for the moment, it seems like we're all safe out here for BIL simultaneously. They had a tough rotation in, last squad standing, and they got a lot of space, perhaps even the third party. The Squirrels are starting to overextend outside of the building.
Yeah, Squirrels just, going absolutely nuts right now, trying to swing out that building and pick up that 1KP, but being safe. I think that was some really, really good discipline there to not overcommit to that and dodging in and out of the building, because, even though we've seen an absolute bloodbath on the side of the zone, there's still a lot of teams around. They're still, coexisting. Just teams, all on either side of their building, it looks like, and it's just absolute chaos. And still, everybody still has to move. There's so many teams are bunched up right on the edge of zone.
Good move right there. I like the horizon queue. Nobody's actually taking it for now, but if you can grab yourself control of these train tracks, the high ground is difficult to push. We finally find out who's playing Caustic. I keep seeing this gas. R&B are the ones rocking with this, and this is where Caustic can get a lot of value. He might not be in a building. This might not be the best position, but there are a lot of corners here to control, and the gas is already set up. React is doing a wonderful job of controlling space with the Stinky Grandpa.
Yeah, I mean, Caustic might be the best off-meta pick in the game. He gives you that fear factor, but at this stage of the zone, people have to push you. They can't be frightened of that gas, and we're going to see Venom Kicks, really just forcing the issue here. Bill really just pushing the way up and, wiping that team. Caustic's just not enough there to hold that space when a team like Bill just has no choice but to push through.
I'm a bit embarrassed, if I'm honest. Just looking at that play, I go, yeah, Caustic's doing a great job of controlling space, and Bill pretend as if not just Caustic isn't there, but there isn't even a team in front of them. That was a very smooth fight out of Bill, when they now control what I'll call middle to the high ground and have a great position themselves. One that we've already seen the weaknesses of exposed, but with the R99 hard trained on this door, I don't think anybody's going to be pushing them successfully from below.
Yeah, and I think that's one of maybe the very few spots where actually having the Bangalore is preferable to having the Caustic, because blocking the line of sight is going to be far more deterring to a team than just having gas, because teams have no option when the zone gets this small but to make plays.
Void sustaining for now, do find themselves as part of the zone. Just making sure that they aren't sharing space with anybody untowards at their backs. Void get the opportunity to slow play this. They're the only team left in Lava Siphon. Everyone else should have to fight before finding them.
Yeah, they have so much space right now relative to all the other teams. They have a lot of cover. They have a lot of time before the zone, before the zone has to move. Oh, sorry, before the zone will move them out. They're almost right on the ending of the zone. But sometimes that can be a negative, because it means that everybody knows that they have to try and eliminate you, that you have the spot that they want. And sometimes, as in Battle Royales, there's still 6 teams alive. Teams can kind of ignore each other and focus you. If they all have the same thought at the same time, that can be really difficult for teams like Void as they prepare for potentially an oop play there, already eyes on the sky.
They recognize exactly what you're talking about. That everybody's looking at their spot and going, man, that looks really nice. So, an oob may be the best way to get on top of it for Donut Shop, who seem to be going out, won't be replicating their success in game number 2. Instead, it's Bill that claim yet another squad. MSW right above them. The team running Horizon right now, and with a Rampart right in front of them. Along the side, we've just got everybody waiting. Everyone will eventually be forced out of cover, but for MSW, it's their time to farm. It's their time to enjoy, because their cover is safe.
Yeah, we see Ed getting eliminated, and it looks like Void are actually getting the perfect scenario where everybody's choosing to focus on each other. Nobody has really been able to start working them, and they are just hoping that these last 2 teams fight before they get pushed out from behind their cover. It's it's a massive situation of cat and mouse right now.
And this is a big problem, because it's not going to happen. We're not going to fight on the low high ground. Void have to send it over, and they do. Wide swing from Blitzen. No Dark Veil, no nothing, no cooldowns means that they fall, and MSW have the high ground over Bill. MJ gets fried, though. No shields on any of MSW, and somebody runs up on him from behind. Bill take the game cleanly.
The way that they pushed through that Caustic team with absolutely no fear to earn that spot is what won them the game there. That was an absolutely fantastic play. They had to make it. They were confident enough to make it. They weren't deterred by the fact that there was a Caustic in the lobby out of nowhere, something that they definitely would not have been prepared for. And claiming that low ground spot was absolutely the crucial movement that enabled them then to win the game from that low ground.
They had the last laugh. We're just sitting there waiting for really anyone to be able to push them. But the zone, especially that last zone, 6, not pulling out a little further towards Lava Siphon, not really having that in the cards, meant that they were always going to get second place. There's nobody that can really attack them.
Yeah, exactly. And those are always the best spots to be in, where you have placement point baked in. Even if something goes wrong, maybe, you know, a lucky grenade, or a team just decides to drop on you for no reason, you know that you're at least got, you know, a solid placement baked in, and you're kind of in control of your own destiny. You're in a spot where you control what happens to you, you know, as best as you could in any spot. And I think that they'll be really pleased with how that game played out. And even if they'd have got second there, even if they'd have lost the final 3v3 coming from, you know, low to high ground, I think they would have still considered that a good game. But of course, they get, you know, the best possible scenario because of their mechanical talent.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching them play it out, and I think we had some good shining moments for everyone. Even MSW, who had a bit of a difficult rotate. But I want to hear from the people who were watching behind the scenes and who got the time to take a whole lot more notes than I did, because I'm just sitting here yelling about it the whole time. So let's bring Dandro and the desk back in to see what they thought of game number 2.
I'll tell you what I thought of game number 2. What is happening with these circles? I think that is just the absolute theme so far of game 1 and game 2. Listen, I don't know a whole lot, but I know when circles just look absolutely stupid, and that's what's happening right now. Mello, talk to me about this, because I was asking that question. I was like, listen, with some of these zones that are pulling the way they're pulling, maybe in an unexpected manner from some of these teams, does it just come down to like team fundamentals and just like who has the better gunny? I mean, what do you think is going through some of the minds of some of these players when they're seeing some of these zones that are getting pulled?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. I think a lot of people are expecting things to play a little bit differently, and I think two of the biggest factors that you have to consider when you're trying to really adapt to a crazy pull is, number one, your game plan has to start a little bit flexible, right? I think Tom touched on it towards the beginning of that game, and I think it rang really true when zones pull that way, right? Is you have to play a spot that you know is going to be playable out of multiple different endgame scenarios, and that specifically, I think that cart or those tracks that was high ground over to the northeast of Tree, a great example of I think Crypt was playing there, where you might have a pretty good chance finding a decent endgame even through a crazy. And the second really being your composition, right? You need to have a little bit of that flexibility baked into your composition, so that if you have to, turn the heel and suddenly make a pretty big change to adapt your game plan around the ring, it's there. It's an option. So yeah, those two things I think play into it in a big way, but of course being insanely mechanically gifted also helps.
Yeah, I think we saw some of those end fights, right? I mean, we just saw players just swinging and just getting these kills that we did not expect them to be able to happen. I mean, right at the very end there, BIL just getting extremely, I don't want to say lucky, but they have that box and they just play off of it beautifully. And you can see right there, this is how it impacted them. 15 KP, 27 points total. MSW, that other team, they were still close. They only had 9, but guess what? Those placement points are definitely helping them out. But Tenrek, I want to get your thoughts on some of the placements of this game number 2, because I'm still looking at teams like Aporia who are still down at the bottom.
Yeah, they haven't really been able to crack it much, have they? They really haven't been making too many waves. They've been eliminated a little too early, especially this time around. Some other teams to watch out for that haven't really made too much of a crack. TS Mex, they have great early game, and their fighting is amazing, but they've gotten caught up in the snowball all too many times at about the 4th circle at this stage. I don't know when it's going to be next time, because who knows where the circle is going or when at this stage in the game. No Name, also a team that's great at fighting and did a whole lot of it over the course of the game, but found no KP or placement points by the end of it. A lot of really, really weird unicorn numbers that I'm seeing from this bottom 10, but I mean, somebody has to fill it out, and this lobby became strangely more competitive with how chaotic the circles were that time around.
Yeah, I feel like that's one thing that we are definitely seeing here, is that some of these teams, I think, are realizing that it's going to come down to less this sort of standard gameplay, and it's going to be about who can kind of flex, who can kind of maneuver a little bit better in some of these zones. Well, let's take a look at the overall, what we have going on here after game number 2 and how this did shake up. Well, no surprise there with a fantastic game number 2. BIL, they're just gonna just barely edge out Donut Shop, who had that fantastic game number 1. And not too far behind them, well, it's gonna be Team Void with that 23. From there, we have a little bit of a drop off going down to MSW, that game number 2, helping them be able to get up here into 4th. And Barnacle Platter, that was a squad that we saw actually in that game number 2 have some great fundamentals, right? We saw them kind of being able to take a 3v3. They were able to just kind of make a trade, and the rest of the 2 were able to swing in, and they were able to get some nice KP for pretty much free and easy. So no surprise seeing them up there. And then, well, we kind of get into the middle of the pack and then into the fall off even more. I'm looking at Squirrels in 11th. We kind of get down here to these single digits. A little bit interesting how just from 11th to 20th is all single digits that are there. And, you know, kind of these top 10, everybody's been able to make a game for themselves. Excuse me. We got one more game of World's Edge, though, boys, and I'm excited to see which of these teams are going to be able to sort of maybe make some adjustments going into game number 3. One of the things that I'm looking at is that, you know, kind of at the end of Zone 4, I literally wrote it down in my notes, the great exodus of Harvester. It seemed like we got to the end of Zone 4, right? And there was like legit 8 teams that are all trying to rotate out of Harvester at once. And they're, you know, getting caught out by some of those teams who had a little bit of forethought to maybe hold Edge of Zone and be able to kind of bring them on down. So, Mello, I want to get kind of your idea on when you're kind of going into game 3 with these zones being so unpredictable. Do you maybe kind of play ahead a little bit? Maybe try not to ride the Edge of Zone so much and try and maybe get into a spot that you can kind of hold as the zone come in? Or do you think that we're just kind of, yet again, still in this weird zone pull scenario and you just got to kind of keep playing your game?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, as crazy as zones might be, I think that it's important for teams to establish very consistent macro. We're seeing that from the likes of Team Void, who we touched on very briefly, but I think it is important to see that we're not exactly seeing them in every single endgame, you know, top 3, top 2, or even winning the game, but they're showing up, they're racking up those points. So I think worrying too much about where the zone might go crazy is probably the wrong approach here. I think the teams that have the most consistent macro, that are going to make the right decisions, take the right fights at the right times, especially for edge teams, right? I think we saw a 3v3 there, pretty important one around Ring 2, end of Ring 2, start of Ring 3, between Barnacle Platter and I think that was going to be No Name, if I'm not mistaken. Those are the fights that you have to take, so holding out edge when you have prio on the edge of those zones, if that's your game plan, hey, stick to it. If the zone doesn't go your way, make sure that you collected that KP on the way there.
Love it. Well, guess what? We have the last and final game of World's Edge ready to go. Players are dropping on in. So, Mello, Tenrek, take it away. Bring us the hype for our last little moment here on World's Edge.
Thank you. And yeah, I can't wait to get into this last game, because I think now I've kind of established how this lobby's playing out a little bit. But I mean, Tenrek, it's been a blast so far. I'm expecting this game to be just as explosive.
All too often in CCs, we see the occasional team or two that clearly is not as prepped as some of the other crowds. You know, when the ring pulls a direction that they maybe don't expect, or their POI is occupied a little too early, we often see them turn into something akin to a headless chicken. Game 2's Omnipotent Storm dictated that everyone would be a headless chicken for the game, and also that chicken would get a gun. Now, here in Game 3, everybody's got to get their head right, make sure it's steady on their shoulders, because we start over again, and still with such a volatile leaderboard. Dandro made a good point in the fact that there is a gap between that upper and lower echelon at the moment, but it is still quite microscopic in the grand scheme of things. Couple simple placement points that you work with, if your rhythm is just a little better established, could boost you up so far right now.
Yeah, you got to keep racking up those points, and I think that goes back to just the consistency as well. If you're kind of always hunting for that pop-off game and you don't find it, hey, suddenly you got bottom 10 in one of these finals. But if your game plan is consistent, if you've worked on these things, and we know so many of these players put in that time to gather that knowledge, to be competent enough, to be knowledgeable enough to find those end zones time and time again, I think that's what's really going to count here for a lot of these squads. Taking a look at some of the teams that are already into this next zone, or rather this first zone here, as it's about to start closing in about 30 seconds. We see Bricked, who has a bit of a scuffle with no name. They're fighting right over this crafter, which honestly, it is pretty critical for a lot of these teams that are playing out of these central POIs to find and starting to walk up a little bit here. We haven't had a whole lot of zones really anywhere near the edges, Tenric, and it seems to be the name of the game here for World's Edge.
Yeah, we continue pulling a little more southwest, but more west. This time around, Fragment has been dragged into the picture, which means this fight for Craft may be a little more elongated and may also have some new occupants as time flies by. Of course, both the teams currently at Frag are well aware of that. They will prep accordingly. I can't wait to see what that means, as our second circle has been predicted as well. It'll pull northwest towards Countdown and Fisher instead. So a lot more teams from these northern sides now with very minimal rotation. Wonder how well their pathing is going to shift to this, because having less space to conquer can actually make the pacing of some teams even worse.
Oh, and I love zones like these, but we'll get back to a little bit of the macro discussion after we take care of this fight here, as Team Wake is taking care already of Ashley Marie. And it looks like the advantage is continuing to be pressed here, looking to get the finish. Team Wake didn't have the best luck in that second game, dying early, selecting what I believe was the wrong truck to be playing early in that zone, but here they are trying to make up for it a little bit. They've gotten the thirst onto this team. They've kind of taken control of the area, but it looks like more members of the World's Edge squads have decided to join the party here, so they're going to slow things down a little bit.
Yeah, and Wake has the capacity to, with this high ground taken, and this edge that they still get to play Gatekeeper for, against a couple of these other teams, primarily Crypt and BIL. Yeah, that overextension downstaging, teams definitely got to watch for that as everybody attempts to sandwich into this more northern circle. Again, the adjustment some of these teams have had to make, really brutal stuff in Wake, learning that the hard way as they lose out on one of those gaps that they could have taken to make these penultimate circles less competitive than they have been so far. But alas, we rage on. Still 20 squads technically, although already a couple fragmentations, as we see Ape Gang looking to potentially get one more.
Absolutely. Chilling for the time being, and they're pretty comfortable with their spot, seeing as they do have that information on the next ring, so they've kind of chosen where they're hoping to reside for really most of this game. And of course, having Bursty on that rampart means that, as we've talked about so far, you can definitely establish some pretty permanent or semi-permanent control over a lot of these areas, and you're not exactly seeing a whole lot of fuses here, so those walls are staying pretty dang healthy. You can keep popping them down, and it kind of plays into the resource attrition game, of course. You can't really just sit there and continue to wail on those rampart walls that the people in front of you are setting up, because bullets can absolutely be hard to find, especially as we get later into the game. And if you're not finding kills to loot up those boxes, they get slimmer and slimmer still. It looks like multiple teams here, though, are looking to bully the squad on the low ground. That's going to be the remnants of Relay's team. Ape Gang has actually walked down. He's going to loot this up a little bit, but is going to eat a whole lot of damage. Has to back up, but not in time. Sunny Hero gets the knock.
We saw the risk before with Wake, and now we see the reward as Plugged Cube gets honed in on. Like you said, managing your own personal economy is something you have to deal with in the early game, and if there's too much distance or too much risk involved, then you may lose too much on the way to that fight, as KSR will now be fully finished off, as Sunny, the final remaining player for that team. Unfortunately, their World's Edge run done. A good CC record for those players, but as a team, unfortunately, they might need a little more time to figure it out, as Night Raid will fall next, down to 18, and I think this might be the earliest zone call we've seen from the lion's share of the lobby this time around.
Here we get to check in on the Crypt, who got themselves out of a pretty dicey situation on the backside of this entryway here, now holding the tunnel. And this isn't a horrible spot, but this team on the inside is looking to pressure, and there's just not all that many teams looking in this direction yet from the looks of it, because the Crypt keeps eating the damage. But yeah, there you see they're finally starting to get set up. And I think one thing that needs to be set up at the Rampart is you can just willy-nilly drop somewhere and hope that you can sort of set up walls and hope to survive just long enough, like maybe that Newcastle Watson or the Gibby bubble can really do. So once you give them enough time to set up a little bit, that's when the danger of pushing that team really starts to escalate. Once a few of those fences are down, and you have that Sheila revved up, it's kind of the last place you want to be face checking. So now that this team has sort of snuck their way in here, and more teams have found their way into the wrong zone call, mind you.
Yep.
They're going to be feeling a little bit safe. But yeah, again, you can't ever pray for consistency in this game, because then stuff like that happens.
Here's Apex Superheroes getting hit up on by Most Hated up in Skyhook. As indeed, like you said, the circle pulling away basically almost entirely out of Countdown. The Crypt is actually one of the few teams that did call correctly, and so they may get allowed to be both a little bit willy and a little bit nilly, as their calculations may have paid off. Superheroes attempting to still find this high ground, but Most Hated delaying the inevitable, which is still that fight, in order to have the procedural damage done beforehand, and so far working to an extent, having to reset a good couple times out here as caught by the Seer attack once more. A lot of noise being made, but not very consequential at this moment, because everyone is either moving down or already very far out from Skyhook, as both of these teams, or whoever walks away from this fight between them, will have to make one of the biggest excursions out of everybody through a bevy of competition. And in come Superheroes. They're gonna press the trigger and do it a whole lot of times to the point where they will get the first down. Zapatin to get the melee finisher can't work. Shield dancing evidently doesn't either. Mav, the last line of defense, and the fight still is not done. Last line comes in for Most Hated as well, and I do believe we have a 1v1 shield tango on our hands here, Mello.
Yeah, and we see the smokes going down there. The Volt does have a Digi here, but it is not enough of an advantage. And Nasty without the Digi, in fact, going to take the full swing, and Most Hated is going to wipe out Apex Superheroes on this northern edge. And I gotta commend the team that decided to take that push, because that is exactly the type of fight that you want to be finding. You know you're going to be some of the last teams in this corner. You want to make sure you're absolutely the last team, so you maybe have an opportunity to find a late Valkyrie, to find a 3P, to fight your way into this next zone. So great find there. 3KP in their pocket, a little bit of breathing room as well, as I doubt any team is going to bother wrapping all the way around that mountain to find them. So they'll be sitting pretty here, and they're going to be feeling about as good as most of these other squads when this next zone pops.
Here's R&B once more on the Caustic, and the Wraith for that matter. We talked a little bit about in the green room about how this comp may not pose the best combination, just because Wraith can feel a little bit stockier than the obvious option, which is the Valkyrie, but clearly Nyx playing for something here is the Wraith, and already we've seen that the Portal can do wondrous things for something like a Caustic. Oh, we'll see if this chemistry fully is amplified, or this may be that last chance here on the last game in World's Edge for this to potentially work out. And with so many points on the line and such a limited time to do so, gotta think a lot's going on in their heads.
Yeah, and I think there's really a plethora of things that this team might struggle with this particular composition. And I think this is going to be one of the biggest tests, or rather one of the biggest showings of exactly why. When you have that Caustic deep in an end zone, it's fine. It can do a lot of the heavy lifting defensively that some of your other legends aren't exactly going to be able to do. But when that's not the case, it definitely gets a lot harder, especially without a Valkyrie. Popping over towards BIL, they're not having a hard time at all here, it seems, as they find a wipe onto a squad. or at least onto a member of that squad. They're going to pick up some loot here, and they're certainly going to have to start thinking about what squad they have to fight next, because they are far outside of zone, or rather far outside of this next zone relative to some of the teams that have actually opted for landslide of all places. So now they're going to look at maybe a Valkylt here, maybe a fight. They've got some information from that scan to know where there might be some other teams, excuse me, posing a threat. So it's looking like potentially a cheeky Valkylt here, but look at this. All of, what, 5 squads have properly predicted this or molded their game plan around it. Definitely have to shout out No Name, who's already sitting in that truck that is very possibly going to be a power spot in that late game. And yep, here we go. One of the squads opting for taking to the skies. It's going to be Ape Gang.
And that's actually given the space for BIL to fully extend through Fisher. Ape Gang was the team standing in their way on that northern side, but opting to instead play for themselves rather than that first fight could potentially be great for the long run, as they've landed in quite a good spot. Shout out to Poria, by the way, for being the first squad in this upcoming center circle. A team that, again, has literally 1 point right now, looking to make a run for it as soon as they can, frankly. And here may be the time to do it. They will continue to sit pretty on this edge of the penultimate circle, as now 3 teams sit in it. Still some late rotations, actually. More teams opting to play for that later zone and then book it for the inside, then play even a softer edge. We've seen teams being very liberal with that term, I suppose.
And we got a peep there at Donut Shop, finding their way in pretty early. Something to highlight is 19 out of 20 squads in the previous game played Seer. You're looking at the one team that in fact does not. And this composition has paid dividends so far. They managed to find a win, which is definitely, you know, a massive start to a Challenger Circuit final. They're looking to find a repeat here as well. They might have the tools to do it, but the other end of these conflicts, we're starting to see these Seer ultimates go down, these catwalls go down. Shooting diamonds is what they're hoping for, but right now they're just looking to run away, as so many squads have eyes on this fight.
Ah, the countdown funnel, c'est la vie, 10 teams plus stuck inside this absolute hodgepodge, desperately trying to escape the circle that has now fully abandoned them. And Void, one of the gatekeepers, sitting pretty. BIL is gone, and immediately after that, Blitzen on the verge of breaking yet another shield. They will use that to immediately head inside, try and take over this entire cemetery's worth of a building.
Oh, but they might have bitten off more than they can chew. Blitzen going down to a pixel of health. Nice hit higher here from B. Fortin, but it is not going to be enough to get the knock, and shortly after, the rest of the team will fall. Void is eliminated. Purple Slushy is able to hold, and they're rocking that Maggie, baby. That's not what I expected to see today.
I love this Purple Slushy team for so many reasons that I'll get into when this circle isn't so competitive, but on the inside, so many have already begun to trade blows despite how much time they have to figure out their own space. But that's just how bare this circle has got, Mello. It's ridiculous. Look at all this open space that can just be held by exhibits, by these tiny short circuits that these players are desperately trying to hold down. Ape Gang is no longer. One of them is Donut Shop. Still has this angle inside. Actually might have less competition at this point. But they do have some more eyes on them as well.
Beautiful use of the Sheila as well. I think that was the right moment to push as well. They were just, we saw them a little bit before this, just right outside of sort of the center of landslide. So when they saw those fights, when they saw those late rotates, they decided to take the opportunity when it counted. And some of the other squads on the outside looking in, especially MSW, starting to struggle. In this case, struggling to get that Valkyrie ultimate off, which means now they're forced to walk in, and there are Sheilas left and right. Tenric, this is far from easy. Barnacle Platter putting on the pressure as well. The Nemesis from range is going to be enough. MSW is taken out.
I mean, that kind of fat finger costs you LCQ spots. That is massive for both MSW and Barnacle Platter. Is now the circle fully enclosing. Donut Shop still rotating, still just trying to breach more space, and they'll throw down a bombardment to secure an extra kill against the Crypt and make sure that they still stand alone. It feels like a spider web that they're trying to construct. They've built such a precarious position even around their cover that they're very liberally working with. Very admirable stuff. Here's Aporia, who's been holding these potential god spots for centuries, it seems, and now they're finally cashing in as well on potentially the highest spot in the circle at this stage.
Aporia here looking to make up some of that ground, coming in arguably as the favorites, having won Challenger Circuit #1. This newly signed squad is absolutely trying to make waves once again, so this might be the way that they kick that off. But looking at their shield health, it looks like they might be at the end of their resources. They have not managed to heal, and you see there on Blueberry Smalls, 0 heals left available for them, so it is going to have to be all firepower to try and play this one out. They're putting on the pressure here on the edges of the circle. Hopefully they can, they can eliminate this team, clear their back a little bit, and sneak their way into maybe a top 3 situation. They have the Kraber in hand, but it's not hitting the mark.
We got Barnacle Platter on the southern edge of this circle. In fact, they're currently the only ones in. Donut Shop direct next to it, very easily able to take this edge. Purple Slushy navigating around the western edge of it, and Aporia gliding over all. Another Rolling Thunder coming in. Aporia just gets to sit back and watch as the fireworks show really starts up. More natural cover beginning to materialize in this final circle, especially as the squads dwindle. No Name may be the first of them as Dead Pride is burned, and Aporia sees that as the ghost sign, but so does another team potentially, as Sin has now entered, and it's 3P before the 2P even started. Gyozi burned down. It's Aporia that takes the main credit, but they are in panic mode, having to head down to the low ground directly after the fact, and the shots just are not landing. Kuzme falls next, and Aporia takes 5th.
Oh, that was the right idea. That's exactly what they wanted. They wanted those shield swaps, but they don't find them in time. Squirrels going to get eliminated as Barnacle Platter has now fully taken control of the east edge of this zone. And we're still not even at final ring closing 10 rig. We've got 50 seconds of chaos left, and we're already down to the top 3. Barnacle Platter sitting here with 2 red shields, already looking to potentially take down this game. And across the way, the other duo, the other set of 2 teams, already starting to scuffle a little bit. Look at all of the artillery that is just flying in the general direction of these squads. This is looking all Barnacle Platter's way.
Yeah, it was 2 members of Purple Slushy still straggling, trying to figure out how to maybe take over Donut Shop's position for a second, maybe launch some damage in, but unfortunately took too much time, and Barnacle Platter were able to come in and feast just as easily as Donut Shop were. But now it comes down to the fight itself, and the Dark Veil has to be used prematurely in order for Barnacle Platter to hold this control. Donut Shop has quite the journey to make, but as long as they spread themselves thin, there's a lot of space they still have the potential to work with here.
And I think this might have given up just enough space for Donut Shop to have a chance here. Already committing that Dark Veil. So this is going to slow things down just a little bit. But I dare say that might have been a touch too early. And it's already gone down, in fact. So now really no cover left to hop up with here for Donut Shop. That was actually, I think, Barnacle Platter's ultimate. So maybe just slowing things down enough for them to not find the next bit of cover was what they were looking for. Luxford, beautiful shots there with the Prowler. They're going to have the bubble as their final bastion to try and hold on, to try and find this. The damage coming out from the Sheila, though, is massive. Can Donut Shop pull it out? It's just down to J-Trips. They've made this a 1v1 scenario, and they're going to take it.
No shot that J-Trips gets away with that shield dance. That was masterful. Oh my goodness, the migration with the Genie Bubble directly after getting outside. Donut Shop knew exactly when they were going to be vulnerable, and then they just put Band-Aid over Band-Aid over Band-Aid on top of it. A second victory with them, with the Jibby again, no less. What a display.
Wow. And that almost felt like the schoolyard over-under. They took a lot of damage, don't get it twisted, but they popped the bubble down. Hey, come here. We're really hurt. You should come kill us. Bam! The Sheila just outputs a tremendous amount of damage, and it was just way too much damage taken in on that bubble fight. Obviously, no one's running shotguns because who's even doing that anymore? Beautiful way to clean things up there for Donut Shop. Well deserved. That's going to be the second win for them of the day. That was unbelievable.
Absolutely nutty stuff. I do have to take 1 second, though, to shout out Purple Slushy, one of my favorite teams to watch so far, and they really got to shine this game. They've been roughing it basically the entire time. Back in CC Semifinals 1, they were in the lobby that got 7 of the top 10 teams from that finals in it, and they took 11th place. They were directly behind the lion's share of high performers. They finally get their chance to perform, and they somehow make it work every single time, earning the most points they have so far tonight, and it means that they're going to rock it up to potentially the top 10. Couldn't be happier about it.
Absolutely. A lot of teams that we have left to watch to maybe start their ascent, as we are down 3 games and we've got 3 games to go. We're going to go to a very quick break. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. And we'll be back with your Stormpoint games with Dandro, Dia, and of course, Tom.
Hope you're all fans of either some nice glazed or maybe a double chocolate, because Donut Shop taking home game number 3 yet again. And I got to say, in a pretty fantastic fashion to boot. while we were there. But hey, we're welcoming on back. We got Dia and Tom with me. We had 3 amazing games of World's Edge. Let's talk a little bit about that game number 3 before we take a look at some of the scoreboard and the overall scores before we get ready to head into Storm Point. You can see there, obviously, in that game number 3, Donut shot 10 KP plus that 12 points to boot. They are up there, 22 at the top. We knew that they were a contending team, and I'm not surprised to see them up there. But I also want to give some credit to obviously Barnacle Platter and Purple Slushy, who were able to get 15 and 13 respectfully. And that's doing some really good work. Both having still 6 kills. It's just those different placement points that are helping them out. And really the only other notable teams to do anything is going to be Squirrels and Most Hated, kind of sitting around that 10 and kind of points. And well, let's also shout out Aporia, 9 points as well, getting there in 5th. Finally, something coming online there for game number 3. But let's take a look at the overall, because I think that's what we are most excited going in, of course, to these back half of the 3. And Dia, help me break down what we're seeing, because there's a lot of movement on this board.
I'll tell you what, we're seeing Gibby meta. That's a joke for legal reasons, but Donut Shop are looking really good right now, and it's coming as no surprise to anybody if you've watched the past couple of games, but it would have been on paper coming into today. I also am noticing Barnacle Platter with a sharp uptick in their performance, and this is something I want to keep my eye on, because sitting at 3rd right now, they finished 19th in the last Challenger Circuit, and it was largely due to a rough start that they had on Storm Point. So when we transfer over to that map, as we're about to, I do wonder how they'll fare.
I'm right there with you. I mean, kind of looking at the totals, right? We saw BIL after that game number 2. It was like, all right, great. They're right neck and neck. And then Donut Shop answers right back, going up on top. And well, you can kind of see some of the other teams there that are kind of middle of the pack. We're sitting around that 21 point, area that's sort of roughly 20. It's where a lot of these teams are looking and sitting right now. So still a little bit of a gap between obviously some of these kind of teams that are 3rd through 8th and obviously our top 2 squads. So we'll hopefully be able to see some more movement here in the back half of today's event. Of course, these next 3 games on Storm Point, which we've seen it before. We saw it in Challenger Circuit number 1, right? Where it's just going to be some teams, they maybe struggle on World's Edge to get something going. They get that new map and they just become all of a sudden an entirely new team. But Tom, I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on 2 different things, right? You're kind of the person who you love looking at patterns. You love looking at what we got going on here. We're seeing Maggie for the first time kind of entering some of the legend choice. And we also got some great stats from production that I believe you had some choice words for. We saw Seer 18 teams in game number 1, 19 teams in game number 2, and 19 teams in game number 3 picking Seer. So help me break down this Maggie pick that we saw. And also, what are we thinking about this Seer?
Well, what I'm thinking about Seer is I wish that I could communicate loudly to every Apex player in the world that the only team who hasn't ran Seer yet has won 2 of the 3 games. You do not need Seer in this video game. Please, can we play something else? Take a lesson out of Donut Shop's book. Please. But on the other hand, there are plenty of teams trying off-meta picks. I think that Maggie, whether that Maggie is a reaction to the Gibby, because Maggie does have a major, set of abilities that counter Gibby. The drill goes through the bubble, essentially takes away at least half the bubble by, dealing a lot of damage. Her ultimate literally just pops the bubble. Immediately bubble is just gone. So it's a major counter, but I'm not sure whether a team is, as good as Donut Shop are today. I don't know if teams are going to be, planning their game plan around countering one specific team, because they are literally the only team, playing this very specific comp, because, of course, they have their Rampart as well, and Maggie is a major counter to Rampart. So the Maggie really, is the end of their day if they run into that. But whether a team would, fully set up to counter just as a single team, I think probably not. You never know. Fair play if they are, and if Donut Shop have earned that respect, but that's fair enough. But I think on the Seer, it's really nice to see a team not run Seer and do well, because the problem with a legend like Seer, and Caustic has the same problem, Bloodhound had the same problem as well, is the best counter to that legend is the legend. So, if you're getting scanned, what's the best counter? It's just to scan back. But it's nice to see that there is some room for variety, and hopefully teams will start to stop crushing Seer. Please. Pleas.
Oh, Tom, I think we just need like a clip of Tom just begging people to do that. We'll just send it to maybe all the Pro League teams, and maybe we'll just try to get something going there. But I'm right there with you, right? I mean, I feel like Seer entered sort of the game and has just been meta nonstop. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if we've really had a moment where like Seer hasn't been one of these highly picked legends that's on the map. So I'm right there with you. I mean, Mackie released and kind of felt like a dud, right, in this scene. It was like, all right, it's kind of cool in pubs, maybe to the casual player, you know, you get this giant ripcord, you know, Beyblade ball that you get to throw out at people. Okay, sick, that's cool. But then you hit comp play and you're like, this thing is useless. Why is it in the game, right? But now we're starting to see, hey, this is why it's in there for some of these more defensive legends that are throwing up walls, they're throwing up, you know, the bubble. You know, it can really kind of cause some chaos. But I'm right there with you where I feel like you can't just be picking Maggie just to try and counter, you know, some of the couple of these teams that are in the lobby. You really need to feel like that you can kind of use the legend to its full ability, like we're seeing with some of these other, you know, kind of legends kind of coming online. So I'm kind of curious. I'm wondering if maybe the map changes will affect that at all. Dia, I'm curious, as we move to Stormpoint, do you think that we're going to see any more sort of legend shakeup, or is it going to be a lot more of the same?
I suppose we'll have to find out, because we're jumping into it immediately. Stormpoint, the first game coming up soon. And as you say, what are we shaking up? My mind does immediately go to the way that Donut Shop are playing, whether they'll stick by the Gibraltar that does struggle to get a little bit more value, or as much value as he has been on World's Edge, in the more open areas that Stormpoint offers. Flexibility, not so forgiving, I'll say in this case, Tom, when there's a lot less cover to play around.
Yeah, that's the question I'm seeing, is whether, you know, Donut Shop are going to stick with the hump on this map. Obviously, World's Edge, Stormpoint, very, very different. I think maybe they weren't planning to, but they might, having had so much success in the first couple of games. I think it's genuinely a really interesting decision, and I would have loved to have been sat in, you know, in their Discord call listening to them, you know, discuss that, because I think if it ain't broke, right, but actually this map is so different. I think that's a really interesting calculation that they've had to make, and maybe they'll play something else and it won't go so well and they might bring it back. You know, there's so much up in the air about that, because success is contagious.
That it is, and I'm sure that they're having a real nice, healthy debate about it behind the scenes, but all the other teams have got to dial things in, because the game has just shifted. A very different round is about to be given to us, because Stormpoint plays out so vastly differently. We saw a lot of building play, even when we were in zones 4 and 5, that changed the way that we got into end zones, for example, over on World's Edge. Now, you do want to control the open ground a little bit more, and the Crypt are starting things off nicely, sitting down here over by Spider Caves, and if you aren't landing Spider Caves, you should be landing Spider Caves. It is ridiculous. These blue armors, these purples that you're seeing them go and pick up, they're there all the time.
Yeah, that's a lesser known fact, I think. They're insane, and this is where this whole sort of drop spot, which has been nicknamed Bean, comes from. It's based around the armory that we're about to see the Crypt start, and that cave. There is actually enough here to make a play. You don't get necessarily a lot of ammo, you don't get a lot of attachments, but that's where the armory comes in, because you're not just going to get any old attachments and ammo, you're going to get the attachments and ammo that you need, which is amazing, right? You know, the RNG is so reduced, but the slight weakness is from this spot is that they have to now sit here and do this armory for a while. Okay, it's a free warm-up, it's a nice aim train, but you've got some very aggressive teams, you know, Down Beast, Mill, that are going to be, you know, probably rotate past you just as you finish. So it'll be interesting to see if the Crypt can get away from that armory safely when they finish doing it.
They have to take on the tap-strafing robots first. I swear, sometimes those things come down from the ceiling and teleport across the room.
Yeah, those boys move. Like, where are you going,
like
man?
The spiders.
Like,
you ever tried to fight the spiders when they're on one? Oh my god.
Right, just don't tell anybody. I died to a spider once.
It's okay, your secret's safe with me.
Yeah.
Aporia, perhaps a little bit less safe. They have chosen the path of most resistance, jumping through on the Trident. There are a lot of open ground, and CSS are right here to take them on. The defending champions are felled in 20th place during Game 4.
I mean, that was
Back
just
to the drawing board.
absolute pure aggression there. Like, but you're taking the opportunity early. Those Tridents are just such a hit and miss. When it comes to the rotates, I feel like you either pull off the most, like, giga brain, oh my god, straight on, you know, the Comp Apex Reddit rotate, or you literally just get folded up into a napkin, wiped, and then discarded. There's just no in between. And that is the perfect example of risk and reward in a battle royale, and CSS are going to be really happy with the early KP.
Super good stuff from them. And now they get to plan out their own rotate. Sans Trident, not going to pick it up and use it. They saw what just happened, instead making their way over towards Barometer, where we've not just got a care package, we've got the next zone as well. Their minimap's actually revealing this to us, as CSS have the unique privilege of knowing where Ring 2's going.
Yeah, that information is so crucial, and they're on the triple purple. They know they can slam this position. There was somebody kind of lurking, nearby, but absolutely just able to scare them off, show presence, claim this building, and I think they're going to be planning to set up in this position for for the foreseeable future.
BIL up top, they've actually been doing really well today. They've got an interesting opportunity right now with the survey beacon that they hold. I'm not going to make use of it too early, I'd imagine, but if we get later into the game and they have the opportunity where no one's looking at them to grab information on where everyone else is playing, that could be really important when looking at the next zone's rotation. That's assuming they don't get their heads taken off first, because the snipers are doing crazy work.
Yeah, that's true. I think those survey beacons, I don't think that anybody really knows how is best to utilize them yet. We've seen, across Challenger Circuit, across Pro League, across other tournaments, teams use them in different ways, and I'm not sure that people have fully worked out exactly what the best way to use that information is. But BIL, going to give it a shot. They're going to have access to that information, like you said, when the zone closes. But what I'm not sure they're going to do is have that entire barometer tower to themselves for the remainder of the game. I don't think they're going to be able to hold both the top floor and the bottom floor, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them pry that high ground, both for Vantage, but also for that beacon, because it's just such valuable information, especially later in the game.
KSR taking to the skies in one of the best Valkyrie ultimates you can grab, and that's in all of Apex from the high ground outside of Command Center. This will take them ludicrously far, but not all the way over to Barometer. They'll instead have to take a short pit stop over in something like Jurassic or Antenna, where they appear to be deciding between now. It's a big toss-up, really, as to what teams are rotating, who's going to be in time, but one of the really nice things that we've seen here, Tom, is that unlike our first game on World's Edge, there aren't a whole lot of teams colliding on rotates, and we'll just sort of cover our eyes when thinking about what happened in 20th place.
Yeah, exactly, and I think some of that is stall point, as we see, KSR are going to run into a little bit of resistance here. There's a team on the other side of the gate, so exactly how they're going to, adapt to that situation, we'll see, as we also see Team Bricked here running into a little bit of trouble in the zone as well. Two teams taking zone damage to fight each other. R&B down to one person as well. Team Wake also down to one person. We appear to have a 1v1 here on a different side of the zone, and there are a few teams now starting to run into each other.
There must be another team involved in this, because there are shots right now, but Colors is not eating them. He's evidently safe in these knockdown shields, and I have no idea how they've managed to avoid the focus from other squads, but revives have got to be incoming if nobody pushes this, and right now, we can see on the highlights, nobody is. RNB going to try and get the interrupt, but it's not happening, and they've got to push up right now into the 1 versus 2. They don't get the full knock, and finally, after taking the Horizon Gravity Lift, we'll manage to do it. That was extraordinarily scalped.
Honestly, though, that was also an extraordinarily brave call. You're out in the open, you're pretty low on health, you get that seer cancel off, but you know that you're getting charge rifle, you know you're under pressure. To just swing into that building, I think, it's send it and just see, basically. To see if you can get those kills, because you realize that you are going to get poked at, you are going to get, nibbled away by all these other teams in zone. That was a really brave decision, and it pays off for them with a couple of extra KP.
Now they have the chance to reset as well, because when you are getting poked at by charge rifles, you also know that you're not going to be insta-third partied. It's from too far away, and Purple Slushy, I'm wishing they had some sort of ranged option right now. They are one of the teams running the Maggie, but as a result of popping the ult excel, Brainsy's going to go down to zone, and I don't know, out here, things are looking real rough for Purple Slushy, as they have been for a while in their fight up against Wake from previous. No, not Wake, the other team that's holding that, I don't remember. Whoever was there.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't the brainsiest play I've ever seen, to be honest with you, to pop that ult excel. I guess what they were thinking is, I feel like this team has basically no health healing between them, based on what we're seeing, and I think they were going to try and use that Maggie ball, because obviously it does give those speed boosts to try and get to the crafter quicker, and they just couldn't get it off, so I don't want to go too hard on them, because we don't have access to all the information, but I think that's what they were trying to do. I'm sure, we'll be able to check those VODs and see exactly what was happening with them. But I hope they get those heals off, because dying to zone is really unfortunate.
Everybody a round of applause, Tom, right there. I was also very confused as to what was going on, but very perceptive. And it does illuminate the dire situation that they're in, and sitting all the way outside the zone, especially by that far, because now they've got to find a way to pick up their teammates, heal up at the same time, then make their way into a zone, and that's all while the game is happening around them. This isn't one of those Fire Beavers rotates that's planned out further ahead of time. I'm sorry about the nightmares, Tom.
Yeah,
but
it's too scary.
This is not like what we see over in EMEA. We've planned out a late rotate where you have access to the crafter exactly like you'd hope. This is a really disturbing look when you're jumping into your 4th game of the day. You only have 2 opportunities left, and you're encountering difficulties like this.
Yeah, exactly. I just want all the Americans to know that you guys don't have to worry about turning around and seeing Fire Beavers 3 deep leaving zone behind you anytime you play this video game. It honestly is absolutely just horrifying, because they are insane. But moving back to, where we're at right now, is I'll just try and calm down. My Apple Watch is giving me a heart rate warning. I just stop thinking about the Fire Beavers really quick, because I'm terrified. As we can see, lots of teams setting up here. You can see the Crypt, one of our early rotate teams. They have been, flexing on edge, and I just want to talk about quickly as we, look at CSS, gatekeeping the rotates from that building that they took earlier. How the Crypt qualified for the finals today. It was some of the best ratting performance I've ever seen from Vera. He sat in basically a nook and cranny in Geyser and single-handedly qualified the Crypt based off those placement points alone. It's nice to see, as much as I've been on my anti-Seer train, that ratting could still exist in a Seer meta. Praise Vera for bringing an old strategy back.
What is happening?
Nice. Wow, get sniped, I guess. You're dead now.
Yeah. I have been just watching Winner's POV on this longbow for the past couple minutes, and we've watched a squad, I believe it was Ape Gang, who just died there. Commit to a rotate with the Bangalore, move back, and just, I suppose, re-emphasize the reality of the situation, that it's far too late when you're trying to move into Barometer now. If you do not have a plan, a place, maybe 3, that you know are safe to play and stabilize in, you're not getting anywhere. That was, if I'm watching that and I'm outside of the zone, extremely disheartening. Maybe I'll just walk back into the red. It did not look fun.
Yeah, and even worse now is, we see where that zone's pulling. They were just running back to somewhere that the zone was just not going. And just to compound on their misery, they can't even get angry because it wasn't a charge rifle. It was a skillful sniper. So you actually just got put in a blender. It's unlucky, and they'll be resetting and going next. As we can see, with that zone pool, all these teams in Barometer, all those teams on the Jurassic mill side of zone, have somehow got to work their way into what is going to be a very, very open space. I think we're about to see an absolute bloodbath, just like we saw in Harvester.
And if you're quiet, if you're silent for just a moment, and I ask everyone in chat to join me for this, you can hear the sound of people everywhere starting to purchase shares in Rampart, as there is very little cover to play. Whether you're picking up Gibby, Newcastle, I mean, heck, I'd do with a caustic, and I wouldn't be happy about it, but you need something to play behind in the zones to come, because there is a gravity cannon and a lot of H2O.
Are you implying that putting a Bangalore smoke down and then just tap sniffing around for 2 minutes isn't going to help you survive for very long?
Gotta hope that it does, especially if you're Purple Slushy. It seems to be doing a lot for them right now, as unfortunately they do lose Dell, but Bricked go down first. A big recovery out of Purple Slushy, who were struggling on edge, and now they found a couple knocks, they found a couple kills. They have 45 seconds to get in this next ring, but it's tenable. They could theoretically make it in before the red takes them down.
Yeah, and Brainsy there, popping an absolutely on-point med kit. They're going to get a revive. Pluto, I think, is going to get knocked, but they've obviously just made an exchange there as they run to meet each other. And Brainsy nearly catches him in his arms as he hits the deck. But what a huge reset. That is unbelievable. It really was on the ropes. It must have come down to literal seconds on crafting and on popping heals. But I think it's great that they've been able to reset and pick up some KP. And they have that trident now, so they are going to work their way into zone. But the question is anybody still watching their back on this side of zone? Are teams expecting them? The noise of the trident will certainly give them away, but they have no real other choice because they're just under so much time pressure here with the zone moving already.
God. I cannot believe they're in here. It's not even in the next zone, but this is Olympic, this effort that Purple Slushy are putting down. Ludo getting chunked right now. Good Bangalore smoke to give them some cover. Night Raid go down, and just like that, the team that was held out by North Pat, they've made top 15. They've got placement points right now that are starting to file in. Donut Shop sitting over by the gravity cannon. One of the few remaining pieces of cover that will be available in the following zones are setting up for the siege, because there are so many teams that are going to be looking at us.
Great use of the Rampart amp cover as well, because as soon as it gets placed, it blocks things like Bangalore missiles. You can literally put it down. Instantly you have protection from ordnance like grenades, like Bangalore Rolling Thunder missiles. And it's great to see that they are sticking to what they know. They are sticking to this comp. We have Gibby Rampart potentially across all of our games today. This is so exciting. There's no Seer. I'm so happy.
Teaching it to the world. They are living by their own gospel. And I look forward to seeing when the lobby starts to collapse around them. Another amazed look on my face. I know you guys can't see it right now, but Purple Slushy make it into the next zone again. This time they didn't have the option to take. They had no time to spare and zero cover to do it. They still got a white on their team, and they're alive. This just gets more incredible by the second. I thought game 1 was crazy. Game 4 is where it's at.
I'm starting a petition to rename them to Team Cockroach because they just will not die. That is unbelievable. The fact they have made their way in, as we see Dia there,
God.
really just showing that was ominous and quite terrifying. Yeah, that's
Slushy.
exactly what I see when I turn around and see Fire Beavers 3 deep coming out of the zone in ranked. As we see MSW there take to the skies and really, I can't. That was the best thing I've ever seen. Yeah, I'm done. All you.
Tom temporarily retiring, only to hopefully come back to us to explain what on earth is going on as MSW get kept out of the zone. 37 seconds left. This is not going to be an easy rotate for anyone. Even up here, MSW do not, should they win the fight against No Name, have a clear rotational path forward, and Gyozi is trying desperately to make sure that it's him with the smokes to cover it all. But so many teams are paying attention to this. 18 seconds left, and time is of the essence. Time that you simply do not have as KSP set up in front, and no one will live through this push.
Wow, that was like some sort of laser pointer presentation there. There were so many charge rifles looking at him, everyone trying to snag that KP, and I think that was GG. As we see here, a team using a trident as cover, combining Rampart and a trident to make additional cover. Donut Shop, I mean, of course it was Donut Shop. Yeah. Their positioning and the way that they have, maneuvered themselves into spots and, played essentially counter-attack on teams is absolutely unbelievable. Because as soon as they survive that first wave of pressure, now the other team has the zone pushing them in, and Donut Shop are essentially inviting pressure on and are able to, push them away and pressure them into the zone and either clear the spot or get the KP or both. Fantastic positioning from Donut Shop again.
Look at this mass exodus that's going to occur. How many kills are we going to lose? We've already dropped a squad. Let's keep count. We've gone from 12 down to 11. We dropped to 9 instantly. Barnacle Platter forced to play these rocks, and thank God they exist. Make it 8 as the round sounds off its closing. And in just a few short seconds, we lost 4 teams.
Yeah, it's just, these zones on Storm Point that pull into the open water are always carnage. Barnacle Platter have got, a really difficult rotate. They're going to follow that Bangle in. We can see them heading towards that cannon. Team Squirrels there. Looks like Void maybe died to zone. Still had some shield bars. They are just living. They are just trying to get placement points. There's so many teams that have to fight. Maybe Boomseye can maybe do something with his 2 mags of R99. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to be able to do here. Potentially other than the third party something. They do have options. They've just gained another placement point because we've just headed into top 7. And they are just trying to survive. But of course, pretty much everybody has Seer. So everybody knows where everybody is. But there's so many teams around that no one can really do anything about it right now.
there is another 30-second lease on life that you have when you're forced to enter this water. We talk about Gibraltar, Rampart, and how valuable these are. Catalyst will give you a bit. There's just a little ways where it's not perfect, but you're able to survive with a lot more reliability than you might be against, or with something like a Bangalore. So I'm looking at these Dark Veil cooldowns, because we're about to see several go up. Almost none reach the zone from Barometer. If you can time it right, there's some survivability to be found.
Yeah, Squirrels there have obviously been found out, and they're going to be sent back to the lobby as CSS try and make a revive. They're going to run out of time because this zone is now moving. Not sure if Cloaked is going to be able to make it out in time. Everybody now has to run into this water. This is going to be chaos.
CSS go down, and there's the laser point presentation you talked about earlier. There are the offenders, those that did not rotate fast enough, and all of them go down. A meager rock left for Barnacle Platter, and again, they are forced out into the open. So much damage is being thrown at them, but here's the lease on life. The temporary catalyst wall with the Bangalore smoke, it's letting them survive for 30-odd seconds. Who's to say how long it'll be until they go down? KSR go out first, though, and we've got 2 squads left. Barnacle Platter, they did enough, and now they have to face off against Donut Shop, Rampart walls and all.
Yeah, and if the Rampart walls wasn't enough, the Trident is there as additional cover as well. Barnacle Platter do not have their Bangalore ult, they do not have their Catalyst wall. They've had to use everything just to get to this point. But what they do have is insane mechanical talent. I don't think they have the will to live anymore, actually.
I've seen a movie like this. I think it was Naked and Afraid. Out in the cold, open water. Barnacle Platter know what's up. They know there's nothing they can do, and it's a good
That was a disrespectful Gibby ult.
Donut Shop. It was. It was a disrespectful zone pull.
Yes.
The map threw the first punch there.
That's true, and I think whatever pumpkin that Pumpkin Eater is getting revenge on, 3 out of 4 wins so far. Absolutely unbelievable. But actually, as much as that zone was a strange zone, it was their positioning. They always managed to find themselves in the spot that gave them control over the oncoming storm of all these other players that had called the zone wrong. They made their rotate, they held their ground, and what they are doing is, I think you can see that they have obviously put a lot of work in. You can see that they have really thought about what spots is the Gibby and the Rampart gonna work in every zone. They're absolutely maximizing the abilities that they have on their team composition right now.
And they are just fundamentally playing a different game than everyone else, where so many squads around the map are trying to rotate in, find a little piece of cover to play. Whatever on earth it may be, we are seeing a new form of Apex in the Challenger Circuit out of Donut Shop. I can't wait to hear what our AD has to say about it, so why do so? Let's go ahead and throw it over to Dandro on the desk.
I think we're about just as baffled as you two are, Dia and Tom, because that was an electric kind of first map that we have here on Storm Point. I mean, we knew that some things would change, right? Some teams they feel a little bit more comfortable on when there's a kind of a map change halfway through the set. But, well, Donut Shop, they're just feeling absolutely confident on this new map, and they're continuing their reign. And one thing that we noticed that I kind of wanted Tenrec to talk a little bit about, and that was we saw some crazy use of the Trident in that game, right? Being able to use it as a little bit of cover and be able to help them stay alive. Talk me through, Tenrec, how we just saw that Trident just become absolutely massive.
Yeah, what a skill ceiling we got to witness after seeing such a skill floor in the beginning of that game. Aporia misusing the Trident, I don't want to say beyond belief, but I really could not believe what was happening in front of me for a moment there. The #1 team from past CC1 getting shredded before they even got off their vehicle and then running straight into CSS, who happened to carry it quite a distance to that final circle where just so happens there was another Trident occupying basically the entire time. Donut Shop's early rotation on top of their natural cover that they were already using all but guaranteed a circle that happened to go into the middle of nowhere. The least cover we have seen this entire night, and it may have just been sealed thanks to Donut Shop.
I'm really curious to see how this scoreboard is going to shake out, not only for that game, but just for the overall, because we might be seeing just a clear gap get created, and, well, looks like we are. There's something a little bit interesting here. Camelo, kind of help me break it down. Barnacle Platter sitting in second, actually getting more points than Donut Shop, 14 kills. These are the two teams we saw that were doing fantastic at the end of game number 3. So I don't know. What do you think is kind of the strategy here between Barnacle Platter and Donut Shop? Because they're obviously, it's seemingly the only two teams that have figured out some level of consistency.
Yeah, and I was actually mentioning to Tenric that I was expecting a lot from this team, specifically because, again, 19th in the previous Challenger circuit, with how stacked that roster looked, was not exactly what I was hoping to see. And now slotting in James Fearless, who is a very experienced player. Obviously, we know what Luxford and Golden are capable of. So to see that stack, I definitely wanted to see them bounce back in a big way. So they were here kind of for vengeance, truly, to flip the leaderboard on its head. So even though they don't win, I mean, we saw the decisions that they made there in the end game. The fact that they were able to farm up so much KP just goes to show how powerful this team really is when they're playing at their best. So yeah, that 23-point scoreline is exactly what I was hoping to see from this team today.
Well, let's see how that kind of shakes up the overall leaderboard. We have 2 games remaining, both on Storm Point, and yeah, we're starting to see a gap start get created. Donut Shop at the top there, 70 points total, 16 points ahead of Barnacle Platter, who yet again is now just a mere 13 points ahead of BIL, who's 11 points of Void. So like, we're just have these huge leaps between these top 4 right now. And then finally, these rest of these teams are kind of all closer together a little bit there. But let's make some shout outs where shout outs are needed. Purple Slushy, CSS, and Squirrels are kind of moving their way up. They're trying to be able to get there. So I think as we come into these last final 2 games, I'm going to be looking at teams like BIL and Void, who maybe they can kind of string something together. They're obviously up here for a reason, right? They're very formidable teams, but they need to be able to do something a little bit more when it comes to these final 2 matches, because other than that, I mean, I think maybe besides Donut Shop dropping just straight zeros the next 2 games, and then like, you know, a team like Barnacle Platter just having a pop-off game, they've kind of solidified they might be the win here this week. We've seen crazier things happen, don't get me wrong, but they are just playing all too consistently right now. Like Tom said, winning 3 of the 4 total games that we have here today. So a little interesting. I think this is, I don't know, I'm all for upsets, I'm all for comebacks, but Donut Shop is just playing a little bit too good for my liking. So let's talk a little bit, boys. If you are, you know, one of this squad like BIL or Void, right? You're just on the outside looking in. You've had some success so far in some of these matches. You know, Mello, I'd love to kind of hear from you, right? You're one of these kind of outside looking in squads. You need to be able to kind of make something happen. Is this the time that you really turn up the heat and just try and kind of just play way more aggressive? You only have 2 games left. Or is it really more about just like playing slow, play for those power positions, try and follow your normal loop path? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's at this point in the match day, right? We've got 2 games left, which is still an ample amount of time if you have a big game. I mean, if you're putting up 23, 24 points, that what Barnacle Platter did in that previous game, that's gonna vault you right up and maybe even keep you there, putting you enough ahead in that race. So I think the game plans need to be executed properly. Again, good macro is going to show through. The consistency is going to show through. I think that's going to be a huge priority. Rotational mistakes, we've seen at least one very tragic one, not naming any names, of course, but it comes down to whether your plan is robust enough. And I think the preparation of some teams is going to show through here. Are you going to be able to just out-frag your way into a higher finish? It's starting to look a little bit less likely, especially with the caliber of teams here.
Yeah, I think that, you know, it's a do or die moment for some of these squads, right? I think we normally we're talking game 6 is like, oh, this is the do or die moment. Things get a little bit crazy, right? But game 5, seemingly the pressure is on more, considering just Donut Shop with this insane lead. So we're getting you know, some words that, guess what? Game number 5, it's ready to go in. So Tenrec and Mello, I'm gonna let you guys take this away, and let's see, is Donut Shop going 4 for 5, or will maybe somebody else take the throne? I don't know. Take it away, boys.
Yeah, we will have to see. Loading into our last game on the mic, Tenric, but the penultimate game of Challenger Circuit number 2 finals. I can't wait to see what some of the teams that fell on a little bit earlier have to show for us. Again, the elephant in the room has been brought up, but Aporia has been a little bit silent in comparison to what we saw in Challenger Circuit #1. I'm hoping they wake up here in Game 5.
It's a trend we see in CC pretty often. Consistency can be your biggest ask when competition and metas and pacing changes so frequently. Aporia so far not prepped for it, maybe out of the running for that #1 spot entirely, but they already have that security. They want to play for that placement, and making it to finals is already a good leg of the race. Let's see how much farther they can get. Meanwhile, here on Stormwatcher, you have a couple teams clashing. This is one of the few spots that have been claimed by both sides. Again, not too many contests today, and I don't know if this one happened previous game or not, but Night Raid now worse for one, as we still have all 20 of our squads at the moment, and this team's trying to re-expand, but it's so difficult when these rotations from the high ground keep coming through.
Oh, and this is so tough. You got to put some respect on Night Raid, though. They are a team we're a little bit less familiar with here, going up against some veteran caliber players here in No Name, so they will be losing out on this contest as this team starts to flood in, if they finally make the final bit of damage that they have to make up here. Night Raid is eliminated. They will not see the rest of game #5 here. No Name claiming a quick 3 KP. And No Name is another squad that I think needs to be talked about a little bit more, because they certainly had the potential. In fact, I think it was one of the teams that I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast today, saying, is there a team that can really start to float to the top today, really have a really big game day? That's where I would definitely put No Name in. Den Pride, very, very well decorated professional player, and Yukis and Gyozi obviously can hold their own here. So firepower is there. Maybe a little bit too late in this Challenger Circuit, but still, 2 games to turn it around, you never know.
Well, with that opening fight, they have been gifted quite a bit of time and space, as Thunderwatch is one of the POIs to come in this second circle, pulling drastically northeast, 2 directions that this circle has been nearly allergic to all night. But certainly No Name happy that the circumstances abide by them for the moment. Of course, still so much game to go, so many teams liable to collapse on them. They must be prepared. How far will they extend to claim that? They are already on an ultimatum to do so, as more and more teams have jumped the gun, seemingly quicker than even earlier tonight, to find a secure spot ASAP.
And as we saw there with that next zone pull, anyone who has that information, I think, quickly understands that the priority spots here are so incredibly important to get early, because the verticality, the inherent verticality here of a zone like this is going to be a tough task to manage if you're not one of the earlier squads. KSR looking to be one of those squads here, picking an early fight, but seemingly having been staved off now, as they haven't found the opening damage quite yet, and it's going to be Squirrels on the other side mounting this defense. And in fact, that ultimate from the Seer isn't in the best spot, and in fact it's way too far away as well, so gonna slow things down here. But another squad has joined the party, and as you said, so many teams picking early fights, this is gonna start to get crowded real quick.
Yeah, if that exhibit was placed down there intentionally, I imagine it was because of MSW. This presence nearby is more of a priority than the KP that they were trying to farm, and unfortunately their attention may have been a little too split, as Relay is the first to be given away. MSW allowing themselves even greater agency over basically the dead center of this second circle. This is actually a really brave play by them, knowledgeably making so much noise when they were just trying to take down a team that was already looking at one. They were looking to third party. So they know that this space is overoccupied, and yet they are willing to still go in on it. And for good reason. They are just not losing a lick of health along the way. Sunny will fall next. There is 1 player left on this squad, and MSW basically hasn't even had to enter yet.
Oh, MSW here, so brazen, but making quick work of this squad. And as you said, because they haven't really had to extend all the way in, they are not really at really any sort of danger, any sort of peril against Squirrels, who we knew was sitting command center from the beginning. So they've walked it back for now. They've sort of done what they felt they needed to do. And yeah, KSR will end up falling at the hands of Squirrels. Things have slowed down significantly here, but we keep hearing abilities being thrown out. It looks like this party might not be over quite yet, and the party's only going to get more and more exciting as teams start to find their way. And 18 left as round one is about a minute from closing.
Yeah, MSW is still keeping their eyes on this, and no doubt some other teams are too, as Aporia has made their way into the circle. They headed up a bit safer this time from Launchpad. I imagine their Trident encountered far less teams. They're now behind Thunderwatch. Pretty safe for the time being. No competition behind them. They'll basically get to W key as freely as they want to until this circle shrinks a bit more, so might actually be able to farm some placement points with that. But still, Command Center, the hub of all the action at the moment. Still, same 5 teams occupying. Meanwhile, this southern side of the circle has become quite the amiable place to be as well, as there's another little clique of squads attempting to predict the unpredictable at this stage. If this circle pulls back south, a lot of teams will have to bottlenose in a more severe fashion than we have perhaps seen this entire finals. And the ones waiting for it, in No Name, in Void, they are waiting for it with open arms.
MSW here was looking to pick a fight a little bit quicker, but suddenly they're the ones getting flooded. It seems Team Squirrels had enough of this pitter-patter of poking from across the way. That's going to be the first knock onto Silent. It looks like they weren't ready for the engage at all whatsoever. And now MSW might be on the receiving end of this team wipe. The last little bit of defense, and there's going to be a Seer ultimate as well to try and hold off Squirrels. And it looks like a drop down is about the only option that they might have left here. That ultimate from the horizon isn't going to do the trick. Will the Gunny make it happen, though? Boomside almost getting insta-knock there, almost getting one clipped, and Sin almost following suit. That's going to be both of these members hightailing it back. This 2v3 is looking way closer than it should be.
Yeah, they've been forced back again and again, and despite it being just M and W at the moment, they have been able to play this out so infrequently. They're forcing this Squirrel squad to continue relapsing, and there's nothing concrete. They're going to still back up again. MSW, safe for the time being, as we have another taker indeed. There has been more than enough noise for basically everyone to chomp at the bit. I don't think too many squads are walking out of this alive, Mello.
Yeah, it looks like the drop down was finally forced out, and I think it's because MSW knew there had to be at least one more team on the north side. We could see it on our maps, and so Bricked is that squad that we were suspecting, and they are fully kitted to fight. Look at this composition. This is just Edge City, baby. They're looking to find that opening damage. They already committed that ultimate, though, and I don't know if they've done the damage to really open up the fight, but that was Flesh that we were seeing. Hits Tyler having to back up, though. Artsy might actually be the first one to go down here. And this push is looking a little bit more dire, and they're the ones that have to slow things down, putting down those Bangalore smokes, putting down that ultimate, and they're looking for this re-engage.
Still on the hunt at this point. Commitment is crucial. Another falling in Void. As Brick continues to make their approach. But now, with the knowledge that it means that they will sacrifice space on this circle. The question is, how defensively do you choose to play this when you've already engaged? Especially when you have this Horizon online, but not much high ground to utilize her for. Especially considering that Squirrels can continue ducking back into Command Center and even make it to the other gaggle of groups waiting down on Stormcatcher.
I think they might have made a call here on the ring as well, just making sure that no other squads are left anywhere near their high ground for the next zone. But unfortunately, Most Hated will be far from that next zone as they are wiped by BIL. This is over towards the southwest, actually quite a ways out from our next zone. So this team took this fight looking to have priority on this crafter, or rather full control of this crafter. They do exactly that, so they're going to continue to kit up. And in the meanwhile, our winners of the previous game, Temric, have been knocked out, and I believe 15th place.
Wow, that may be their earliest exit today. So finally, we have some respite from what we've seen today. Because it feels like, I don't know, it feels like we saw the same show in just a different episode between games 3 and 4, which is crazy considering how we shifted maps. A nearly identical top 5. In a nearly identical fashion, by the way. I think Purple Slushy has made it to 3 top 5s now, but only with rats. And yet they've still been trying to fight it out. Admirable, respectable, but certainly not viable the entire way through. Unless you want to farm those placement points up, which Purple Slushy continuing to do. As BIL will be met almost immediately with that competition in Purple Slushy. They will have to make their way up ground through this storm, as will Purple. In fact, they both might split because of it. Purple Slushy a little behind on the decision making, but they have that advantage to work with in tandem, so they have the luxury to play the waiting game a little bit more. As Vem will take a further step back while Koifel and Kikix try to cause a ruckus on the front line. They'll do a pretty damn good job of it too, getting inside this smoke, forcing the front line to isolate, and it's working to an extent, but still too slow, too close, down to just 1 on Purple Slushy, peeking through the one-ways without even a Digithreat to work with as well. It is so dodgy, and in Storm for that matter, it's still a question of how heavily either team commits to this. Both still thrust into question, and all the meanwhile, poor Dig Vibes ratting for the crypt behind it all. I don't know how much of it he's catching wind of, but regardless, he is trying to avoid it as much as he can. He will be skirting the long way through this storm to head out, as Purple Slushy do have some time to res, but so does BIL as they re-enter, and now comes the rest of that damage. A down as quickly as they came back up, and this time, there is not enough fortification. Purple Slushy, no rats this time. They will fall.
Popping back over towards Thunderwatch, we have yet another engagement. This is where the circle really starts to completely run out of space, and the fights are forced to break out. We see that B. Borton has already gotten knocked very low, and I think this squad is probably on its way towards a loss here. Yeah, Blitzen has already been knocked all the way out of the game. They haven't recovered that banner either. They're actually running for the hills, playing for a corner spot here. I think they might be vying for a last-ditch effort with this Valkyrie ultimate, so losing out on the Thunderwatch fight, and that's critical. Team Wake it's actually also taking up some space here. Looking at where this next zone is pulling, it is a pretty strong spot to be playing out of. You're one of the last teams that gets sort of vantage on the rest of the zone, even though it does slope upward. I mean, you have some of the cover from the way that the building is shaped up on height. You have some doors that you get to walk out of. There's even low ground to play here later in the game that I don't think I've seen any of these squads take up. So, Wake kind of sneaking in here in a big way after that fight, but you gotta wonder, is Ape Gang gonna let this one through? I don't know.
Ape Gang is one of the best teams in CC when it comes to positioning. They are one of the first teams to the right circle just about every time, and that has continued tonight despite how much we may have been thrown for a loop, but they somehow are also one of the best teams on an interaction basis. Say the same for Barnacle Platter as they'll burn away Apex superheroes, but at the moment, Ape Gang taking up potentially 3 squads worth of challengers over here in Thunderwatch, which they've been holding for eons at this stage, and they've thrown all of them to the wayside so far. I wonder if Wake will be any different, as it doesn't look like they've fully collided, but I can see something brewing there, as Barnacle Platter is about to be met by BIL from behind. I don't know how prepped they are for this.
It's starting to get dicey, and here we see Barnacle Platter trying to make that keep out happen. BIL looking from the low ground upward. This should, in fact, be looking pretty good. But look at this off angle that they've been forced to play. Golden makes it work, and that's going to be with the charge rifle doing the damage. Luxford with the follow-up knock, and now it is just down to Kikix. And this zone, Tenric, is starting to hurt a little bit too much for their liking. They are going to be, I believe, eliminated.
Yep.
Maybe one more syringe there left to take, but Golden does go down in the process. They're going to look into zone to grab this banner, but opportunities to get this res are going to be quite limited.
Yeah, Bricked is also waiting right outside of this, so Barnacle Platter may also meet their match here. if all goes well for them. But yeah, that was unfortunate. I think Kikix was just still a little behind, and BIL didn't expect an early fight like that, but with the Storm coming in, they kind of had to still go for it. Unfortunate stuff, but pacing so important here, and the second you lose it, you lose the game too. As this circle, not taken up by teams just yet, the natural cover too enticing to teams like Aporia. We're just trying to gain that space so when they move in, it is a powerful push indeed against two Titans here. My goodness. You got Barnacle Platter on one end, you got MSW on the other. Either way, Aporia is surrounded by talent.
R&B still alive here. But they're also really just running out of options. This uphill battle, quite literally, is just going to get increasingly more difficult, and they don't have a Valkyrie to work with. So they're really relying on the vertical tools presented by the Horizon. But if they do choose to try and take that height, they're going to be met in the by the waiting arms here of Ape Gang, which is not exactly where you want to be. So eyes out for the squad, what they might opt to do. And yeah, here we get to see actually having completely rotated away from the situation and recovering their knockdown player. That's going to be No Name, who is playing that low ground we mentioned earlier. So they're sitting honestly pretty comfortably here. Not a whole lot of squads that can pressure them from the north, but I don't think that's going to be the case for R&B in this spot.
Yeah, it's funny. No Name actually gets to take the most shots at R&B here, so they will be the ones to do a lot of the damage. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean they can get the kills, as PlugQ gets the credit for taking down React, as well as Beck. In fact, it's Ape Gang continuing to greed just everything. I mean, they have not relinquished control of basically this game since its conception. They have not had to move that much. When they did, they moved right on back over here to watch, and oh, what a brutal time indeed it is for R&B. They will fall next. We have a top 8. No Name is still safe under Thunderwatch right here, but we have so many takers now on the remaining POI of the circle. A kerfuffle for sure to come.
They have plenty of cover to just hold on for a little bit. And if I'm not mistaken, they're also running that Bangalore. So yeah, they're going to have tools to walk on up. But as we see this pull, that walk up is going to punish quite a few teams here. All those teams that were up on that ultimate high ground outside of Command Center have, I believe, already been forced to move. So it's really just up to No Name to bide their time here. The fights are already breaking out above them. They're starting to catch the tail end of some of these engagements, however, and that spot at the end of zone has already been taken up.
I don't know if that Rolling Thunder hit anything either. I think the teams that are starting to try and approach this assume that there are already other occupants, but no one wants to get inside this yet. No Name is going to be the first to try to, as they'll slowly creep up, and it looks like they're going to try and gatekeep Void for the time being. Throw a Rolling Thunder down onto them on the edge. That might just be them right there, as the Thunderwatch fight continues to bubble. MSW, one of the takers of them, in a more vulnerable position than others. A little bit of a farther distance to travel, perhaps more obstacles to cross, more of them becoming aware of each other at least, as we have finally had the excursion between Bricked and Barnacle Platter. It is Bricked on the winning side of it by a large margin. In fact, they barely have to do any patching up before they will start their movement to who knows where, though.
They've cleared out this side of the map. They have some cover from the smokes. They can set up even more smokes here in a little bit. And this walk-up is actually almost for free, as these two squads up on height are already starting their fight. That's going to be Aporia. And Brick is going to get the wraparound. They're going to get behind this squad, but they're instantly getting just pummeled from across the way. Ape Gang having to commit pretty early to this drop down, and now they're the ones that have been eliminated. We see something that Aporia might not be aware of. There's a team behind, there's a team in front. They want this wipe to at least get that last bit of KP. We're down to the top 3.
MSW tried to approach and failed. It's now Bricked, at least 2 members of it, that try to finish off this Aporia squad, and Bricked trying to continue to do that. It's taking a hell of a while, though, as Tyler still has not fallen, and Aporia has not either. They finally will, and Team Wake will pick up the pieces, take their own victory, But once again, a tribute to just the last ability that every one of these players has the potential to have. First MSW, then Bricked, that lose crucial placement points, especially from the top of the key, in order to make it through Game 6 with a sizable margin.
Yeah, and I mean, that poll, it leaves you with very few options to end up playing. Really surprised there to see which team ended up sneaking in at the very end. That very early run-up from No Name actually ended up punishing them in a big way. And though we saw some of the squads cleared on that western edge of that ring, that walk-up was just so difficult. In fact, the last team to walk up was the team that ended up taking it. So great job, great awareness, great patience, because if you pull the trigger a little too early on that Valkylte, suddenly you're between the last 5 squads and you've got nowhere to run. And as you said, we get a little bit of breathing room taking this one. We have a brand new champion that's had a kind of a hot and cold performance with a lot of cold moments, to be completely real with you. To see them rise up here, take a game out of this lobby was an absolute blast to watch. But we will let Dandro and co talk us through this one. It was a lot to cover, a lot to follow, but yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mello. What a great game number 5. We saw some new players, saw some new teams kind of making some waves. I like it, right? This isn't just the donut shop, kind of special we have going on here. We saw Wake was able to take that game, and Aporia, a team that we've been talking about all day long, finally able to make it to that top and have a pretty convincing kind of end game fight there that was going on. So I'm curious to see how maybe that kind of mixes it up. And are we going to see any things? I'm also curious, though, when it comes to the leaderboards, those top 2 teams that we saw earlier, how did they work out? We kind of said Donut Shop needs to not, kind of drop zeros 2 games in a row, and I'm kind of worried that maybe that's what happened. We actually saw in that game some early aggression from Barnacle Platter, and they were able to they came up, they rolled up on a team, they're able just to win that fight. They get pushed from behind, and they just win it with ease, and they're able to kind of hold their own and get there. So we saw some great stuff from Barnacle Platter. I didn't see much from Donut Shop on the map, but we're seeing some new teams come online. So I think definitely a shakeup game as we get ready to head into the last and final game of the night. But Tom, talk to me about what you saw that game, or even maybe towards just that ending fight, right? Because I think we saw a lot of the catalysts coming into work, but what kind of jumped out to you in that game number 5?
I think what jumped out to me was the aggression. Suddenly it felt like nobody left. There was just, I think Wake were probably like doing a deer and looking really shocked, like, hang on a minute, we're about to win this game for free, because everybody has collapsed into this corner of doom and they're just able to roll up and sweep it. But I think what it shows is why we love Battle Royale esports, because they're a team that, I'm going to be completely fair, they haven't had an amazing day. I don't think that they're going to be, absolutely laughing, sat in their Discord call between games. It's been a pretty rough game for them. We've seen them eliminated pretty early most games. But it just shows that anybody can win a game, and then what that can do for their confidence. They're now suddenly going to be leaped up that leaderboard, and the glorious thing about this format is, there are points for every place that you get towards the overall standings, right? So winning a game, even if you're right at the bottom of the overall, is completely changing your outcome. It's not just about winning. Okay, first place gets you that automatic qualification, but actually if you can jump from 14th to 7th, that's massively improving your outcome, and every team still has something to play for going into Game 6.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, Dia, you've been here for every, kind of iteration of Challenger Circuit, and I think we've been able to see that teams being consistent are what really kind of helps them get to potentially that qualification spot. And we can see here that maybe some teams are now kind of finding their footing, right? Let's take a look at the scoreboard real quick. We got Team Wake. They were the ones to take it on home, 5 kills, and that obviously there's 12 points for the match there. 17 points total. Aporia with the 13. Bricked, a squad that we've seen a lot of hype in the chat for. They're going to be nabbing 15 points. And then other than that, the only other real notable score, well, it's going to be Void. That was one of those teams we said, really needed to be able to have a shot at winning or jumping up. They need to have some good games. 10 points is not bad, especially when we look. Barnacle Platter, okay, they gained 9. That's decent. Donut Shop with 0. Dia, this is what we were kind of alluding to. Donut Shop needed to not drop a 0 in these last 2 games, and they somehow managed to do that.
This is the question we have to be asking ourselves as we head into Game 6, is did Dandro curse the most dominant team of the day? Is that the power that Dandro holds? Right now, 7 points separate them from Barnacle Platter, but if Barnacle Platter take this, and you know they're hungry to do so, I think it all comes down to you, Dandro.
I am going to shut up and not root or go against anyone because with great power comes great responsibility. And apparently that is what happens with Donut Shop. But either way, point being, the thing to note here when we look at this is that this is really a battle between the top two, right? This is going to really all come down to these top two teams and how are they going to perform, right? VIL, Void, they're a little bit out of the money. We saw some really good, kind of play out of them. They both got some decent points in that game, but not enough to really kind of bring back this lead into maybe shooting shot and shooting range. I know that Donut Shop, after dropping 0 in that game, they're not happy after having the dominant performance they've had so far, right? So coming into Game 6, I know that this is a team that they want to take it a little bit more serious, and these are some really cool stats. Tom, help me kind of break down, because I feel like this tells the story of how Donut Shop has been able to kind of be at the top of the leaderboard almost the entire day.
Yeah, I think that they are, doing what every team in a Battle Royale dreams of, right? They're getting a lot of kills, 30 kills, third for kills, second for average placement, being consistent on both strategies. You see a lot of teams that really placement heavy. You see a lot of teams that are really kill heavy based on their strategy. The days that you can do both is absolutely perfect, and they are winning. Even if they don't win the last game, even if they somehow lose first place to Barnacle Platter, even if they don't win overall today, to win so many games in a Battle Royale and be quite so consistent, I think is just absolutely unbelievable. And, hats off to them regardless, because there's so many factors at play. There's so much RNG. There's so many good teams in this lobby that it really can't be overlooked just how consistent they're being. But then Barnacle Platter, I think they've gone under the radar a little bit today. We haven't really talked about them that much. What's worth saying is, they're being IGL'd by Luxford, who dropped out of the Pro League. He gave up his spot on a Pro League roster. He said, I want to become an IGL. I want to develop another side of my game. I'm going to drop into the Challenger circuit and prove my worth. They maybe didn't perform anywhere near as well as they would have liked to in the last finals, but now they're showing up and they have a great opportunity to have a big game and win it all. And that'll be a big step for Luxford and for the team. And I think that this is going to come down to the wire.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially when I'm looking at stats like this, right? Literally being first in every single category except points. Is it kind of just tells me, we were talking about consistency. And obviously, if you're first in all of those categories, it just tells me that you are able to just be consistent. Well, we're going to have to see, does that consistency continue into game number 6 and give them a shot at the title, or will they drop short just a little bit and will Donut Shop be able to kind of pick it on up? Only one way to find out. That's to hop into games. So, Dia, Tom, take it away.
Thank you so much, Dandro. It has been a joy to be able to set up before these games, figure out what the real big teams to look at are. And now that it's in the 6th game, stakes are higher than ever. You talked, Tom, about Barnacle Platter as we dropped into this game and how we really haven't been mentioning them that much. And I've been in an odd place with Barnacle Platter because coming into week 1, they were almost all that I spoke about. I went, this is basically a pro league team, just moved down to the Challenger circuit temporarily. And then, as you said, they had a rough time. Now that we're in week 2, they're looking like a pro league team again, being able to replicate the success. They've even had a roster change, bringing in Fearless for this week, and they've looked smooth as butter.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, as we watch No Name here try to contest for Thunderwatch here at the top of Storm Point, nice big opening damage. We're going to see that Horizon in play with that nice gravity boots passive. That means that you can drop down freely and get big opening damage just like that on Ellie Elite.
A good initial knock and one that you're unlikely to escape now. No Name know that they have full control at the moment, and that's not just height, that's in the numbers as well. Gyozi takes quite a bit of damage, and a disengage is always possible, especially with these gravity cannons. That looks like what No Name are going for. They full send it over into Stormcatcher. Let's hope nobody's here waiting.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think they've realized that they're about to get thirded and just decided to cut their losses and begin their rotate as they just think it's not worth it. They want to play their game out, and they're probably hoping that they get their knock thirsted for them, I think.
I think they will. It seems pretty darn likely that Ape Gang are going to clean this up, but they are also playing a bit more conservatively, not quite sure what they've entered into with the gravity cannon sounding on the retreat. So Ape Gang will take to the roof, see if they can find a little bit more information that way, but all this is giving time for resets to occur. We've still got 60 players in the game, and you may have lost a kill by disengaging just a touch too early.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing now is that ooh, nice missiles there. I should be sleep is now asleep on the floor. Let's see if they get that thirst. I think that's an easy thirst. Yeah, he's gonna get an early night now. But what you see here, I think, is what I would call a very Game 6 moment. Ape Gang obviously have seen that these teams have fought in the previous games, and have now clearly set up their game plan purely around knowing that this is going to happen again. They're just aping, right? They are the Ape Gang. It makes complete sense for them to do this. But it just shows why contesting can be so difficult, because, okay, you might get away with it that first game, you want to claim that spot, but at the end of the day, teams are going to see that this is completely just free pickings, as it has been here for Ape Gang. There's no reason why a team is not just going to run you down if they can be prepared for that and they know that they can close that gap straight away.
And I like the move out of them. Other teams making their own maneuvers around this map, as we haven't even gotten the chance to discuss where the ring is pulling yet and how this might play out because of our early contests. Aporia sit right outside of zone number 1. Just to the, what is this, east of Prowler Island. Not a bad spot to be in by any means. They do have to go through the open water, however, to make their way into this zone, and that's without us even knowing whether they've got next zone read or not. Though they do have Catalyst, and they can hit the map consoles. They don't, by our standards, actually have the information yet.
Yeah, obviously, the console spawn rates on Stormpoint are middling. There's no POI on this map, unlike World's Edge that has a near guaranteed console. So you have to be flexible, right? You have to be able to play with and without that information. And Aporia are going to make their way in, and I think they're going to potentially use the information of where people are valkying to, where people are rotating to try and guess at least the vicinity of where the zone is.
Void seem to have figured it out. They are driving right past the IMC Armory, and we've seen this story before. It doesn't look like it's going to end in as much tragedy, but there is one knock. Find out if Blitzen can be picked up, as it was really close to the corner, but there is no forgiveness from the Crypt. You drive by their armory, you are going down!
Yeah, absolutely, just relentless pushing it from the Crypt. They close that space down. Huge Nemesis shots from Dig Vibes there. They clean out that thing. That is easy kills for them. Slater adding a little bit of style with the TG Wingman headshot as well. That is pure aggression, and that is a team that needs points. The Crypt have not performed very well today. They have not performed to the standard we would expect. This is a team that I hold in very, very high regard. These guys are really talented, but both the last finals and this finals, it just hasn't come off for them. And they know they need a big game here to get up that leaderboard, and that extra little bit of aggression there, I think, is what they've been missing across the 2 finals that they've played.
Tom, I gotta ask you, can you hear my cat?
I just did, actually. I just did. I just heard your cat. I hope that what she was saying is great analysis, Tom.
Yeah. I have no doubt in my mind. Yeah, I need to know, because I like it. I like it when my cat can, enter and hype you up. Don't want it to be the whole thing, so I'll figure something out in the meantime. Donut Shop, they're trying to make their own solutions. Another Trident gaming moment, and with the Gibby, actually, it's pretty safe. That's something that we didn't get to talk too much about, as they made their rotations pretty obviously through Barometer in games previous, but they have a panic button, unlike a lot of other teams when using this Trident.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that I think people have almost forgotten is a thing, right? Be able to Gibby bubble that Trident and then boost away. That does make the Trident a lot safer. You see it there, perfect. Thank you so much for doing that just on time. It's almost
like Donut Shop
like
going.
Listening.
That's great analysis. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of looks like a donut a little bit, like a jam donut.
Yeah.
That might be only
Trident
a 4:40 in the morning comment, but I'll take it.
A Trident donut. A little chewy, if I'm honest. But it seems like they're just fine for now. Late rotation, or not late, very edge-focused one. It's going to bring them into the slower side of this ring. Coming through the spider caves, not a lot of teams will have approached this zone from the south, and that's just the natural conclusion of how it's pulling. So the hope in this move is that Donut Shop will be able to find a spot to Valkyl too that doesn't have a lot of teams contesting it or in the immediate vicinity. We'll find out how it goes. Now we get the zoom out and the next ring that actually looks great for them.
Yeah, I was just about to comment on the fact that we have, our top two teams here are playing completely different styles. Barnacle Platter, who we never quite finished talking about, are in checkpoint. They're crafting up. They are taking their time. They're going to fight their way in, whereas Donut Shop have once again called the ring near perfectly, I think. They've put themselves in a really strong position. They own a lot of space. And what they have here in this spot for this zone is they have in line of sight over so much ground. They are completely in control. They can make sure teams do not get near them unless it's with a Valkyl. But any team that is Valkyling in as this zone gets close, gets smaller and smaller, is going to take a lot of damage to other teams there, as we see Pumpkin Eater 69 getting some revenge on the Prowlers, doing a little bit of warm-up, a little bit of aim training. And, what's really notable is that two of these players have shotguns, right? Not something we really see anymore is people playing shotguns, but getting in that Gibby bubble with a shotgun, it's a bit of a throwback, but it's also a deathly dangerous combination to use that in those close-range fights.
We spoke about this a little bit earlier, Tom, but it's also a big change if you have mouse and keyboard players on your team.
Yeah.
Shotguns, really important. And when you're able to force shotgun fights with something like a Gibraltar, all of a sudden, mouse and key stocks start going up. Unfortunately, purple slushy stocks go down. They're a team that end up falling during the course of the past couple seconds. BIL coming in to try and finish off this next squad in Cenote, should be able to do so, but Bem does go low, going out actually, as TS Max trade back, and now a fourth party enters the ring.
Yeah, KSR here getting involved with just team after team after team. I think plenty of aggression in the final game because everybody's just desperate for points. TS Max, they literally got first in every single round that they played yesterday. It was first, then first again. And they have barely made an impact on this lobby across all 6 games. They're going to be really disappointed with their performance today.
Yeah, it's the harsh reality of showing up, especially when it's your first Challenger Circuit Finals as a team. As TS Max didn't make Challenger Circuit Finals #1. Instead, they have to adjust to what is a very different caliber of league. And that's the tough thing about Challenger Circuit, is that with every incremental final or advancement, things get exponentially harder. And when you hit the finals, then following that up to what these finals will eventually qualify you for, the Pro League quals, or in this particular case, the last chance qualifiers in Split 2, things get even more difficult. And it's very, I'll say nearly impossible to prepare adequately your first time around.
And I'll say one thing that I noticed from watching some of their games yesterday was they played, I'd say flamboyantly. They were very aggressive. They're one of those teams that once they knew that they qualified, they, were playing quite ignorantly, to be honest with you. And obviously that's their right when they've already qualified. And they were being successful doing so. And you just wonder whether maybe that game style is harder to translate to the extra step up in a finals where there's so much more pressure and everybody's playing just that little bit more seriously than, say, a team that plays, like Donut Shop, that plays in zone, that likes to take positioning, that likes to bank, solid placement first. I think that it's harder to recreate TS Max's style of gameplay in a finals lobby than it is for maybe a Donut Shop.
Yeah, and Donut Shop, actually, to your point, didn't really qualify in that style. They were in the same lobby as TS Max. They pulled out a 5th place. Not bad. 27 kills on the day, but it wasn't anything crazy. We actually saw a really similar look out of Lonely Fans, which of course have now translated over to Aporia, in their first appearance in Challenger Circuit #1, where we had some of the slower paced lobbies that Challenger Circuit has really ever given us in its lifetime. Disappeared.
Wow, I wish my Rampage hit like that. That was some crazy damage out of that Rampage there, as they just get absolutely evaporated. And they're just clearing their side right now. KSR have found themselves actually in a nice little pocket of space here. They have pretty clear sightlines. They have a building to anchor, and they're just going to reset and try and worm their way into zone. But they do have a very, very long way to go. But you can see, those mid-range weapons in full effect. Scout, Nemesis 30-30, as they are actually going to come under a little bit of pressure here now. Bill moved up with that rampart wall. They are going to seek to gatekeep them, and the question is, how are KSR going to get out of this sticky situation that they now find themselves in as Bill move in for the attack?
Very much translated their game state right now, making it about winning the next fight. Them a little far off, spots a Valkyrie dropping down. Is he going to call it in time? Teufels's gonna get caught, but Beam's right back to the hero, eating dirt as he falls, and that's a team fight that Bill will have no problem taking.
Yeah, and as much as I was, talking up the advantages of being in so much space, what it means is if there is another team around, if a team moves up on you, they know that it's isolated, they know there's no risk of a third party, and they have absolutely nothing to fear about pushing it. And Bill, with a really, really clean 3v3 there, that was just immaculate team fighting there.
Teufel. Ridiculous. This Valkyrie built very differently. And Teufel is a player that I had my eyes on coming into today. Again, pretty quiet day for Bill. They've been silently successful, and it's a good thing as well, since they very much, like most of our squads joining us today, had their first appearance in the Challenger Circuit Finals, where we talked about that exponential difficulty increase. Yet, pop off here, just be able to do it anywhere. Another pop off from Mav taking out Ape Gang. That was real nice looking. And another player who's having their first appearance in the Challenger Circuit Finals, and it looks like that.
Yeah, I mean, that was fantastic. Again, it's just their mechanical talent, and I think the R9 is a weapon at the moment that is in its absolute prime. If you are not using the R99, start using it. It really does have everything. And also, I don't know about you, it's one of my favorite weapons to use. There's just something satisfying about the R99.
It's been feeling especially good, as you say, this season. I was in a call with a friend a few days ago, and we were playing Apex, and he looks at me, passed by an R99, I ping it, I say, go ahead, it's yours, I don't need it. He goes, I don't like this right now. What did he like? He liked the car more. I don't know what to say.
Did you say friend?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's something that you have to think about after a moment like that, because friends don't let friends leave the R9 on the floor.
That's like, yeah, I mean, is he a Revenant main as well? Like.
R.I.P. Revenant. Oh, I miss that legend, and that's not something that anyone should ever say. I know as soon as I even think it, we're gonna get a Rev meta, and it's going to be so terrifying.
Yeah.
CSS, unfortunately, won't live to see it.
Yeah, that was Apex Superheroes here, just playing on the edge of the next zone, and as we can see, teams are now starting to slam into these buildings, but Breakdown are going to try and go back, and actually there's a team in the spot that they came from, and they are finding themselves really pinched here in between two teams.
MSW playing this building rather well. They don't have too much work to do once they set up behind these walls. They got plenty of mechanical skill should anybody choose to run at them, and for the moment, that's simply not an option. Smoke's buying a little bit of time. It's a good spot to be in, but not one that should actually net them kills. Their focus, rather for MSW, should be on the next rotation in, towards the zone that is pulling them over towards Mill.
Yeah, it looks like they're deciding to try and mirror Bricked in there and kind of just chase them towards zone, as we see Barnacle Platter here taking an engagement on the edge of zone here in Mill. And this is a really important stage of the game because they haven't yet racked up any KP that we can see, and James Fearless is going to go down.
So problematic there. Even with the RE45 in hand, you cannot solve this problem of verticality without climbing right in someone's face. Barnacle Platter have lost one, and remember, this is the squad that needs to overtake, that need at least 7 points. They have no kills so far, and it doesn't look like they're gonna get any because Most Hated are chasing them down. There is no mercy here. There are fists, and there's the end of Barnacle Platter. Most Hated shut them down, and we will not be getting anyone to top the leaderboards.
The fans of Donut Shop, yeah, the fans of Donut Shop can rejoice that, barring something pretty unbelievable, that basically secures Donut Shop's place in the LCQ. Fantastic. We had a really fantastic effort by Barnacle Platter, and they'll still be pleased with their performance, but just not quite able to close out a final game that delivered enough points to see them surpass Donut Shop at the top of the leaderboard.
Really difficult spot to be in. You talked about the sandwich earlier, but when you find yourself between two teams, especially in a position like that, there's not a lot that you can do that feels correct, and unfortunately, it takes you down. We'll see how this Valkyrie works out. MSW actually going to be right around the landing zone, as they still populate a bit of Mill, fighting themselves for the dominance in it, as only a touch of this POI is still in.
Wow, fair play to the Crypt. I think they have managed to find a spot to nestle down in. We'll see if Donut Shop allow them to coexist, whether Donut Shop are going to see that as an isolated fight, because there really aren't many teams in this zone, because once again, the zone is just pulling to a random open bit of territory on the map. And it really has been a perfect day for Gibby, and it's been a perfect day for Rampart.
I remember back when data mining was all the rage. Everybody was talking about data mining this, data mining that. I think it's going to start to come back looking at how Donut Shop are playing this specific zone, because it has been a perfect landing from the first rotation into what is one of our stranger pulls that I've seen. Now, the Crypt are the focus of Donut Shop in this case, and most hated are looking at them as well, because this is pulling a little further to the north. You have to withstand now a Gibraltar defensive bombardment if you want to play the game.
Yeah, and I think I saw a couple of members of the Crypt there in the kill feed getting taken down. They were coming under a lot of pressure, and they don't have that Gibby bubble to reset like Donut Shop. It's really difficult to play those spots. They're running that horizon. They don't have a lot of defensive utility, but they did manage to find their way into zone. And if they can live there, it'll be a strong spot. But I can just see, Vera's just been knocked again. I think they are coming under all kinds of pressure right now.
Already into the top 7. We'll see if Bricked managed to outlive the Crypt, although it's not looking likely with Artsy right in the middle of everyone. Out he swings. Good Horizon ult initially, as this appears to be a 1 versus 1 for Artsy. Both these rats stuck in the middle. No one looking at them yet, but Slater finally gets some attention thrown towards them, and Artsy can finish this kill off, and, well, he doesn't. Takes a little while too long, and the kill evaporates before his eyes. Still stuck in the middle. Not a great place to be.
He's going to be gutted by that. Slater and Artsy, former teammates, decided to go their separate ways after the Pro League qualifier, and bragging rights lost there. Artsy not able to jump on Twitter after the game and start slamming Slater. He had that kill stolen from him, but I tell you what he hasn't had stolen from him, his guts, because that was a ballsy play there to just ascend into MSW.
You gotta respect the gumption that came with it. The play itself, maybe best left for another day, but MSW will need a big one of their own toward this next zone. They don't have a catalyst wall, and it might be the better play here to just go for second, even third, try and take out the squad next to you, because they're melting as they leave mill.
And look at how much space Donut Shop have as MSW. Our third team, and Donut Shop are literally just laughing with the Sheila. Watching a team, I feel like we've seen this before. Am I having deja vu?
There's very little you can do in a situation like this. Sheila finds a bit of purchase. In comes the Rolling Thunder, but Donut Shop are all over you, and Donut Shop will claim their 4th win of the day. That's a 60% win rate in a battle royale. Tom, it's ridiculous.
You know what? Like, what else can we say? At this point, I don't think I'm even qualified to say anything other than wow. To do that, the way that they have called zones so well, the way they have held space, the way that they have managed to win games without coming under a lot of pressure. We've never seen them in situations where it's been particularly sketchy. We've never seen them in spots where you think, how have they got out of that? It's been cool, calm, collected, and consistent.
It's really weird to me that you're sitting here as an Apex Legends journalist and a commentator. I'm sitting here as a commentator and looking at the Challenger circuit for the past 2 years, constantly, all the games, watching every single one, and neither of us are qualified to comment on what just happened. They're changing Challenger circuit right now. I don't know of anybody that would be able to really understand the impact that they're having, not just on these games, but on likely the Challenger circuits that are going to follow after, because people are going to look at this and they're going to learn. Somebody who's definitely been watching and likely picking up a few notes of it. Let's bring Dandro back, because we just saw, yes indeed, Dandro, the 4 wins on the day.
Whew, 4 out of 6. I think that's something that we haven't seen for a very long time here in the Challenger circuit. I mean, Donut Shop all day. We were actually, me, Mello, and Tenrek were in there, and we were like, oh, we kind of heard you guys being like, oh, Donut Shop fans rejoice because they're able to take it on home. And we're like, we don't even see them. And it was just at the very end there where we're like, oh, look at them. They're all three alive. Oh, my God. Okay, they're going to totally win this, that they're there. I couldn't agree more, Dia. I think we saw Donut Shop put on an absolute clinic today of how to potentially play some of these Challenger Circuit, kind of tournaments moving forward. And the one thing to note is that the only two games they dropped were actually the middle games of kind of both map sets. So it seems like they started off hot, and then maybe tried to get a little fancy, maybe kind of struggle. They slip up a little bit in that game number 2, and then by game 3, they're back doing Donut Shop things. So maybe they can kind of look at those two middle games and sort of clean stuff up, because this is obviously a team that has a pretty high that they can leverage, right? They looked a little bit of a cut of above the rest of the squads, barring Barnacle Platter, who also looked insane today, and still nabbed themselves a decent amount of points. I'm going to say unofficially, until we probably see the scoreboard that's there. But, you guys did an awesome job kind of casting the entire day and sort of, being able to watch all these games piece to piece. But let's talk at a macro level, kind of. We'll start first 3 on World's Edge, right? Dia, what kind of, thing did we see from Donut Shop that seemed to kind of lead to their success on World's Edge and kind of give them, kind of a little bit of a boost over the other teams?
It's funny that you say that, because we talked about the composition carrying over, but you're right. There was something different about Donut Shop and the way in which they were winning on each map with the comp. And specifically on World's Edge, it felt very much like the point that we made mid-game, Tom, about the shotguns and bubbles and MNK and all of this coming together. They were able to really abuse this close-range fight, and it wasn't so much about the Rampart as it was about the Gibraltar, whereas Stormpoint, it felt a little bit different, eh, Tom?
Yeah, and I think that, looking then at their Stormpoint games, it's their positioning. Even on World's Edge, they called the zone across all of the games so fantastically. On World's Edge, at one point we saw them just crouched in landslide, knowing that the zone was coming there, biding their time. When you have, the two P's of being successful, right? Prediction and patience. If you know where the zone's going and you have the patience to sit and chill and know that the game's coming to you, to know that you're going to get kills later, to not feel like you have to push things and be really aggressive and just go crazy, what you're doing is you're controlling your own destiny. You're allowing your skills to come to the fore. You're taking fights on your own terms, and you're kind of staying out of that mishmash that we said about unknown teams, people you haven't played before. Their game style, for me, gives them so much control, and I think we've just seen that pay off. They've had some really good zones for their comp, but actually that's only because they play in a way that maximizes, the style that they've chosen to go with.
Listen, the 3 Ps of Tom, okay? Predictions, patience, and please remove Seer from the game. I love it. I think that was really great. The 2 Ps that you dropped there, Tom, that's a little golden nugget that if you're watching, that's why you go follow Tom on Twitter, so you can get some more of those. But hey, we got the match report for game number 6 ready in the overall leaderboards. Let's see how things did shake out here at the end. And yep, well, look who it is. It's going to be Donut Shop at the top there, grabbing 17 points. They only had those 5 KP, but guess what? It's going to be those 12 points from their placement that really help out. But BIL, admittedly, it was the last game of the day, but still kind of going huge. 24 points, 15 KP, and that second place. Then we saw MSW kind of, finding their footing along with Bricked, both dropping 10 points. Other notable points on the board was going to be Apex Superheroes down in A2. They only got those 2 points for placement, but they still had 9 kills. So they were able to kind of stay on board a little bit longer, get some more of those match, placement points. They could have been up there as well, but pretty standard par for the course. You shot it to BIL yet again for that 24 points, but let's do it. Let's look at the overall leaderboard. Let's see how this ended on up. And well, we're all not surprised at all. I did not cast or curse them for game number 6, so I'm considering that a dub. Donut Shop, though, they're taking home the dub for today. 87 points total. And well, this is a little bit of a shakeup too. BIL with that 24-point game, they actually leapfrogged Barnacle Platter to be coming in second with 72. Barnacle Platter just falling short a little bit in that last game at 65. And then we kind of have the drop off into some of our teams there. Dia, Donut Shop, they're at the top, but I want to talk a little bit about BIL and get your thoughts, because that one final game really just helped them gain additional, kind of Challenger Circuit points that they desperately need.
It really did. And second place, not a bad place to be, especially when you consider that this team has made their first appearance in the finals. It's really beneficial to be able to place among those top 5, and if they can make it to future finals, all the better. What I will say here, Dandro, is that if you had adequately cursed Donut Shop, BIL would have qualified.
Ooh.
They didn't make it, but they were darn close. If that 0-point game had come in, a team that's performing like this, you talked about it yourself just before this game, Dandro, calling out that when you're placing among the top 5 in the league, or rather in the lobby, over these stats, kills, average placement, points, damage dealt, it means that you're doing consistently. It's a nice numbers indicator that we can use. And looking at this, BIL have absolutely passed the litmus test of a squad that can be consistent in the Challenger Circuit Finals. So good job to them today, but I dare say we'll be seeing them again, and it is not that far off.
Yeah, I want to call it there too. 47 kills today, first overall. And I think that just kind of goes to show that you can see there when you look at average time survived, average placement, right? They're obviously lacking a little bit, being fourth in those. Those are kind of easy things to fix, right? Because we got to imagine you fix your average time survived. Hopefully your average placement goes up. That means you're going to be increasing your total points. And, potentially they could have knocked that out. But I actually want to see the overall stats for Donut Shop. I know we looked at that earlier, but with now that last final game brought in, I don't know if we can pull that up, production, because I think that this is really interesting to look at, right? Obviously, they were first for average placement. They're first for points, but they're kind of second and third in a lot of the other kind of areas. Tom, I'm curious to get your perspective on this and how kind of these stats translate to how Donut Shop was able to be the number 1 team in our Challenger Circuit today.
Yeah, I mean, that average placement of 4.3 is so impressive. It might not sound it, but across 6 games, that means that they are essentially making pretty much every single endgame. Okay, they won a lot of games, won a lot of endgames, right? They won 4 of our 6 games. It's unbelievable. But, third on kills is still very impressive for a zone team. I've seen, teams who play zone come away with a lot less kills, but it's because they're not just playing zone like some teams do, where you take positions that are frankly, just not going to yield you any kills. You're purely playing for placement. Because they took space, because they positioned themselves in areas where they had a lot of control, and obviously they, you saw your snipers on their team. You saw they're taking long-range weapons to make sure that they can not only win their fights, but also snag kills, steal a kill across the map, shoot a team from a Valkyrie, take a kill here and there, and all of that, they're almost free kills because you're under no pressure. The guy in the Valkyrie getting peppered is not going to turn around and one-clip you out the sky. If you miss, you miss. Nothing is going to happen to you. I think it's just the control. I think these stats just show how they put themselves in situations where they weren't under a lot of threat, they weren't under a lot of sort of heat throughout their games, and they really did just position themselves in an area that even if things didn't go quite their way in the end game, they were always going to have a baseline of points.
And this is another situation where I think we can talk about their composition, because you're saying, Tom, that for a zone team, they're playing very proactively. They're able to take a lot of aggressive angles. They're able to do that because of amped cover, because they can set up places where they are safe, where they also have lines of sight that they can fire straight through, where they can't be shot back. That's what differentiates this team from anybody else playing zone, is that they have this transparent barrier to just fire away through.
That's a super great call. Thank you so much to both of you, because I feel like, it's easy to look at those stats and you're really like, well, how did they do that well, right? When it kind of comes down to some of those intangibles and, some of the maybe not as apparent things of how they were able to be on top. So Donut Shop, congratulations yet again, grabbing that spot in the LCQ, kind of finals or qualifier there, and also taking home some nice placement points. So we love that. And, obviously everybody else grabbing their own fair share of those qualifier points. So I think that's all we got here today for you, though. So Dia, I'm going to let you kind of give your closing thoughts on today's Challenger Circuit event and maybe kind of what you're looking forward to for the next Challenger Circuit.
Thank you, Dandro. It was a wonderful day, and I appreciate both of you for doing alongside me. I know that we don't have them on screen right now, but Tenrek and Mello have done a wonderful job of covering today's action alongside us. I'm excited based on what we've seen today, because we got to see Rampart introduced. Anybody who's been following me for a while knows that I really like Rampart. Really freaking out about her being featured in the ALGS, and now having that alongside Gibraltar in here does demonstrate that we're starting to get these meta adaptations that take a little while. North America is easing into this experimentation, and I really like the look.
I'm right there with you. I love seeing new legends enter the meta and people kind of trying to maybe figure out a way to kind of use them. And well, we actually have the expert on that. Tom, it's been a pleasure to have you here. Kind of talk to me a little bit about what do you think we might see evolve a little bit between this Challenger Circuit and the next one? But also, what do you got going on and where can people find you? Because I think Tom needs some credit here in the Apex scene for some of the work that he's doing.
Well, I mean, if you insist and you have to follow my Twitter, it's at @tag_Tom_Apex. And you can obviously find some of my written work over at esports.gg. But back to the games at hand today, I think the thing I'm hoping we see as the Challenger Circuit evolves, obviously the next event coming up in a month. So there's a lot of time for teams to scrim, experiment. We've obviously got the whole new Apex season coming on May 9th. So there's going to be a lot of changes. There's changes to World's Edge coming. So one of our competitive maps is going to get changes. We're going to get a new legend. We're probably going to get changes to other legends. So there's a lot that could change. But I'll tell you what I'm hoping. Less Seer, please. Look, Donut Shop have showed. There's no arguments now. They won 4 of the 6 games. Just be aware. Drop the wall hacks. We don't need them anymore. Play something else. Please, let's just have a bit more creativity. But, jokes aside, what I think they've done is they've shown the value of positioning. Okay, I'm a sucker for a zone team. Bias, right? I think that playing zone is just the more mature way to play. Sometimes you're much more in control of your own destiny. There's a lot less RNG for you. I think that it's a bit less flashy. It's maybe a bit more boring at times. But what I think it shows is a pragmatism to make it work. Sometimes being in a spot where you just have to make it work, where you're being patient, like I said before. So that's what I'm really, really looking for. And the other thing I'm looking for is, will Donut Shop keep this comp in the LCQ when the standard of play goes up just an extra level?
Well, I have the same question too, but thankfully they're going to have a little bit more chance to kind of maybe figure that out, because we do have another Challenger Circuit number 3 coming up on May 27th through the 29th. We're going to be live streaming here May 29th at 6 p.m. PT right here on twitch.tv/torchprod. I'm sure you'll see a lot of the same familiar faces that you saw here tonight back at it again. We are really excited. If you want to learn more about that Challenger Circuit, how you can sign up, how you can get involved, go check it out on Battlefy, as you can find all of the information that you need. But with that being said, that's all we got for Challenger Circuit number 2. So thank you, Dia and Tom, and yet again, thank you to Mello and Tenrek as well for bringing all of the action. We've had a blast here, giving you, showcasing all of this talent that's coming through the Challenger Circuit number 2. So yet again, please make sure you tune into Challenger Circuit number 3, May 27th through the 29th. I'm Dandro, and that's all we have for you here today. Have a great night, everyone.